We're going to do a different type of video today. Today, we're going to be looking at the Dynasty trade market for the running back position. However, since we got a lot of new people to the channel, subscribing, got about 2,000 subscribers in the last month and a half or so, I want to go over the other trades. So I'm going to put those old videos into one video. So you just have it as a buffet. Do what you want with it. But we're going to keep on with the trade videos going forward after this. But I'm getting a lot of questions about players we've already talked about going over the market, and it's hard doing consistent videos off of them. So I figured I'd put them all in one video, have them all together. That way they're there for these new people who are just now coming to the channel so they can see it. So do what you want with that. It's best probably listen to as a podcast or play it at 2x speed because we're going over a lot of trades from January up till now. But it's good to look. Some of these probably did not age well, but the process in line is something you want to look at because we're predicting the market in your league. Again, you got to involve the player a little bit, but the market's what matter. How to trade, when to trade, why to trade, what your leagues are doing, trying to guess with the tools there with the trade calculator, the trade analyzer per dynastyleaguefootball.com. And the trade finder where you can look at real trades that actually happen. Let you know if a player's liquid, that means if they're able to be traded or not in your league, if they're moving in leagues, or if they're hot on the market, being traded left and right. You can get a good idea off that, whether there's a lot of trades of the player or very few and just ridiculous trades, stuff like that. But knowing the market, predicting the market, guessing the market, it's best to guess the market good and know the market. If you can do both, you can time things good, and also knowing your league very well so you can catch your league mates over a barrel or catch them napping when news happens or instances happens in your league or with the NFL. Something you need to know to keep on keeping on to capitalize on these situations. But let's dig into this and see what's going on with these trades. But before we do, make sure you tap that subscribe button. Give that a good tap. Give that mouse click on that button so we don't miss out on any of these trade videos. But let's go ahead. Let's take a look at these trades. The first running back we're going to talk about today is very expensive in Dynasty. Probably one of the most expensive players in all of fantasy sports. And we're talking about Jonathan Taylor, running back of the Colts. December ADP has him as the RB1 and the third player drafted overall. He turns 24 in about 10 days, depending on when you're watching this video. But in about 10 days, he turns 24 years old. This season, he has 861 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's caught 28 balls for 143 yards. He's averaging 3.08 yards after contact per attempt and is averaging 7.5 yards after the catch per reception. He has 4 RB1 weeks and 3 RB2 weeks. He's been placed on injured reserve due to the ankle injury, which caused him to miss a slew of games. But what the market is saying about Jonathan Taylor right now is that he's still very expensive, even though he's kind of had a down year due to injury, but he has been productive, and he's very expensive on the market still because everybody wants that young, productive running back. Taylor, on the trade market, we're seeing him traded for Austin Ekeler in a second. Another trade is him for Christian McCaffrey straight up. Another one, Brian Robinson, Drake London, a 2023 first, a 2024 first. So think about this way: a mid-round pick in last year's draft, a first-round pick in last year's draft, a 2023 first, and a 2024 first. That's a haul for him. Taylor for Breece Hall, who is expensive, and Romeo Doubs. Taylor for two 2023 firsts, a 2023 second, and also a 2024 first. So 3 first-round picks and a second in that deal. Taylor for Trevor Lawrence in Superflex. That's a major trade in that format. Taylor for Kyle Pitts. Both players are very expensive in Dynasty. Taylor for 2 2023 firsts. I think that's a deal considering what we've been seeing. Right now, he's a player to kick the tires on, even though the price is high, because there are a lot of people who are devaluing the running back position. We've been talking about the running back reset and how running backs are just going to start flipping on their heads and the values are going to change rapidly in the next year or so. So a lot of people are already pricing that in their player values. Not everybody, but some people are. So if you kick the tires, you get to gauge the price in your league or in your multiple leagues or however many leagues you're playing in. Kick the tires if you're interested in See if there's a discount due to that. Whenever you have an asset in the top 5, he's going to be expensive. Expensive players are always players that you can always sell if you want a windfall of assets to help rebuild, retool, or if you're good and you just want more assets, more wide receivers, or you need to get stronger at another position. That is something you can always do with a top 5 player. That is a chip that you can just always cash in and unload. And as long as you get a good comeback, it's not going to hurt you, even if that player is productive for years afterwards. They just bring a lot in return, and you want to capitalize on it. If you just sell just to sell, you might be hurting. You might have some seller's remorse due to that, but it's just dependent on your personal scenario in your league, because some guys want to hold him forever, which I could see that. I could see him being productive for a long time. I can also see him not, since he's a running back. Running backs get hurt. Also, the fluidity of value in running backs are going to be changing, and you may want to. It really depends on your preference here. I don't think there's a perfect time to sell him. Probably the best might be right before the season, because he's just had an injury-riddled season here. We're going into the off-season. People are going to look back at the rosters. They're going to be looking at the younger guys coming in, and they're going to start looking at him with more value right before the season starts, because he will provide an impact for your lineups then, and I can see that giving him an increase in his dynasty value due to that. Selling wise, you can always sell him as long as he's got this value. You just flip him, but you don't have to. He's not a sell per se. He's just a guy with a lot of value, and you can always cash in that chip. You just have this gold chip in your pocket, and you can load it whenever you want, but you don't want to hold on too long. It's also a good thing to know that you'd rather sell a year too early than a year too late. So you want to think about that as his career turns on while you got him on your roster. But right now, you can get a windfall of picks and players, and that's something you want to capitalize on if you need to retool, rebuild, or you're a middle-of-the-road team. But you can also hold him as well, because I think he's going to be good for a while, but you got a lot of options here with Jonathan Taylor. But if you're going to buy him, you're going to have to pay up. You're going to have to save up and get him, save up some picks. It's probably going to take 3 first-rounders, maybe 3 first-rounders and a little something. Maybe if you're lucky, like that one dude, 2 first-rounders, probably 2 first-rounders and a little something and a little more. Who knows? But kick the tires and see what comes back at you. And the worst thing that could happen is you just walk away from the trade, and guess what? At least you attempted it, and you don't have to worry about it. The next running back we're going to talk about is middle of the road-ish, maybe a little bit lower on the spectrum, but I figured we'd talk about him today, as we're going to be talking about all the running backs anyways, and that's Elijah Mitchell for the 49ers. December ADP has him drafted as 152nd player overall, RB52. Missed a lot of the season due to a knee injury. Turns 25 in May, so he's not a young buck anymore. That's pretty old in running back terms. He's starting to hit that apex where Dynasty gamers are starting to devalue him just due to the age alone, not the other stuff, but the other stuff as well. He appeared in just 4 games this year, rushed for 224 yards, 3.28 yards after contact per attempt, 5.6 yards per carry, 3 catches on 3 targets on the whole season, well, in 4 games. Christian McCaffrey's the lead dog there. They're going to pound the rock with him. Not good for a former 6th-round pick. He's very liquid here. He can be flipped out at any time. Here's what the market is saying about him. Mitchell for Teddy Bridgewater and Malik Davis, and also Zach Moss. Mitchell straight up for Kadarius Toney. Mitchell for 2nd-round picks, and this is for multiple occasions. So Mitchell for a 2nd is what we're seeing a lot on the trade market, multiple times. The price is just going to drive down through the offseason. It's just going to decrease. People are going to look at Christian McCaffrey. They're going to start looking at Mitchell's age. They're going to see that he turned 25 years old. They're going to look at the injury-riddled season. They're going to remember that he's a 6th-round pick. Day 3 prospects don't really last that long as top-tier players or productive players. So a lot of things are going to happen that will drive down his value. I think seeing him traded for 2nd-round picks is too rich for my blood. I'd rather get 3rds and 4ths for him. If that much, I feel like he's very risky considering his age, his situation, late round pick. He does have some juice in his step, but it's very risky to make the investment. So I do want him as cheap as possible. I do want him as a player that is pretty much free. I want him pretty much free in my leagues. If I feel like I'm paying, if I got to think about it all, I am not making that deal. And I feel like the rookie draft time is the best time to go after him. There's not a good time to sell him right now. The value is depreciating. Probably in season when he was coming back from that injury, when there was some possibilities of him just producing some good runs off and on, spelling McCaffrey, that could have been your window. But right now, you're just going to have to wait. You're going to have to hold. Or you sell him in a package in a much larger deal to move up for a better player. The other player in that deal that you're trading is the lucrative piece, and he is just an addition to that trade. So that's something you could do. Or you can flip him for a third, fourth, or if you're lucky, like one of those other dudes at seconds, and be able to just get another guy off waivers, fill that spot. Maybe that guy's just as productive, or give you 80 to 90% of the production, and you got that third, fourth round rookie pick. Whatever value is going on in your league, and you can get that rookie, and then you got that waiver wire guy that can probably get you some production as well. Now it's time for our third running back today, and this guy's ADP is very interesting here considering how productive he was later in the season. It was early December, so probably not everybody was caught on yet, and now it's probably going to rise in January and February because the production won people fantasy leagues. I'm talking about Jerick McKinnon of the Chiefs. He had an ADP of 192nd overall, RB 62. He turns 31 in May, 3 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 weeks, very productive, 284 rushing yards, but caught 53 balls for 513 yards, scored a lot of touchdowns. He's a league winner off the waiver wire this year. The price went up significantly. McKinnon for Tanu Gibson, a second and a third. McKinnon for a second. We see a ton of trades like that. McKinnon for a third. We've seen a few trades like that. McKinnon for Kareem Hunt. McKinnon for Jalen Warren. McKinnon for Donovan Peoples-Jones. McKinnon for Darnell Mooney. McKinnon for 2/3. So I want to tell you something about a player that rises in value that is becoming valuable, but you think the price is getting up there, but in some leagues, they get sold as a discount because you know what? That manager has that player, and they're like, I can finally unload him. Let's sell him for Jalen Warren. Let's sell him for Kareem Hunt. Let's sell him for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you can get big trades out of that player. Antonio Gibson, second and third. Second round rookie picks. Anything else, really. You'll get both sides of the spectrum when a player becomes a sell. You'll get guys selling just to get rid of them because they've never been a sell before, and now they can move the asset. Or you got guys who are going to maximize that value. Someone wants to pay up so they can get the production now, and they will unload some assets. So you will get both sides of the spectrum here. We should expect his price to drive down during the off season, and you might be able to buy him this summer, especially if something happens with the depth chart. And he's also 31 years old, older running back. You don't have longevity with this guy. You got short-term production if you get any more production, because it's always a risk with these older running backs. Another thing is there's not a good time to really sell. I don't think the price is going to stay like this. If you're going to sell and you want to sell, you better do it soon. Should have done it a few weeks ago if you could have. But if your league opens up late or something, you don't have an open trade market throughout the whole season, then you might have to wait and see what you get, kick the tires, and maybe just hold throughout the off season. But a second round pick seems like the sweet spot to get the deal done. If you don't want to pay that, don't pay that. And that price might drive down during the offseason, especially when we get the rookie draft time. Because you know what? I'm not paying my seconds when I'm looking at these running backs in this class. I'm looking at a 31-year-old running back here. I'm not paying that. So obviously that's going to drive down. Late second, early third, mid third, early fourth. It's going to drive down because we're going to look at these players in this draft and we're like, I'm not trading for this 31-year-old running back when I can get this 20, 21, 22-year-old running back here with second-round draft capital, early third-round draft capital, and could be getting a good situation, tested decent at the combine. I'm going to take my shot on that than this 31-year-old running back that might be losing their spot on the roster, or something's going to happen, or I may not have him next year or year after because he is an older running back. All these possibilities that could go negative on us with the bottom falling out that could hurt our roster if I deal this second-round rookie pick for this older asset, unless I absolutely need the production now. But that price is going to drive down. I don't see the market not saying, hey, this is overpriced, let's drive this down. I think a second-round pick is a reflection of in-season playoffs of guys getting through, and they're trying to make it to their championship game, so they're paying up, making sure they get that player, and the manager just taking advantage of that. I see that price driving down. The time to sell was a few weeks ago. Now that price is going to regress. The best time to sell was a few weeks ago. In season, if you're lucky, if the depth chart goes unscathed, you might be able to unload him right before the season to get that production boost when it comes to his value. But it's very tricky here. It's very tricky. He's also be coming from an offseason where his value has been lower. It'll probably never get this high again unless he comes back next year and continues the production. But right now, the value is high. Let's look at the first player we're going to talk about today. And we're starting from the top here. And we're going to be looking at Kenneth Walker, running back from the Seattle Seahawks. He's just 22 years old. And in December ADP, he was the RB2, being drafted in the top 5 with a 5 ADP, which is high. And I predict that's going to drop a little bit due to what I've been seeing in mock drafts here recently. So expect some change coming, but not so much where he's like a sell or anything. This season, he rushed for 1,113 yards and 10 touchdowns, had 3.08 yards after contact per attempt. He's also forced 50 missed tackles. He's had 3 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 weeks, 10 games with double-digit PPR fantasy points. We need him to do a little bit more in the passing game. He only saw 5 or more targets in 2 games out of all the games he played in. However, he was productive. He's still just 22 years old and showed some good stuff on the field. Going to the Dynasty League Football Trade Analyzer, we're looking at him on that calculator, and he's worth less than the 101, but he's worth more than the 102 when it comes to calculator points. It's kind of like the 102 in a second, kind of gets it done from a point range space. But really, if you're just dealing with straight picks, looking for the value, looking for the currency, kind of got to get creative with it a little bit. But less than the 101, so he's less than Bijan Robinson, obviously, but more than the 102 in 1 QB leagues. In 2 QB leagues, I bet you the 102, 103 might be able to get it done, or at least it's going to be a lot closer. Looking at the trade finder, looking at actual deals as happened per my fantasy league, Walker for Jalen Waddle, Walker for Deebo Samuel and a third, Walker for Austin Ekeler, Walker for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, Walker for Joe Mixon and Treylon Burks, Walker for Nick Chubb. He's expensive. No matter how you try to get around it, he is not going to be cheap. You're going to have to save up to get him. His price tag has increased, and it should stay that way until something happens. It should be good and holding strong throughout the offseason. And honestly, unless he falls on his face early next season, should hold it during 2023 as well. If you're trying to sneak away with a discount, the best time might be during the rookie drafts. If the prices in your league inflates for those rookie draft picks, which they might, and you might be able to catch him at like a 10% discount or so, but nothing crazy because he's still regarded as a young running back who's been productive, and those are not cheap. You can sell him anytime if you need to unload, because sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and if you got that one asset that you can get a haul for, go ahead and do it. You can do it now, you can do it during the off season, you can do it right before the season. Whatever's best for you, whatever's best when you're reading the tea leaves of your league. He's an expensive asset, and you got to unload that expensive asset sometimes. Just make sure you get a haul like some of these people. Or if you'd rather have Jalen Waddle like that one dude did, or Austin Ekeler, or Amon-Ra, or if you'd rather position the wide receivers, or get another running back, whatever you want to do, you can probably do it with Kenneth Walker. Probably just not Bijan Robinson because he's so expensive. The next running back we're looking at is a mid-tier running back. He's a veteran. He's going to be hitting the free agent market here soon, but he's got a lot of explosiveness in his step. He can be productive, and it's going to be interesting where he goes in free agency. I'm talking about Miles Sanders from the Philadelphia Eagles, or soon to be away from the Philadelphia Eagles. And this was from a request from a subscriber. So thank you for the submissions. And I'll take submissions, and I'll make sure I make them priority for future videos. So I love that. But right now, in drafts, December ADP, January is going to roll out here soon. 69th player off the board. Running back 22 off the board. So he is down there a little bit, but still holds value. He's kind of in that tricky part of drafts. Will be a free agent in 2023. Kind of makes the waters a little bit murky. Turns 26 in May, which is a little bit older for a running back in Dynasty fantasy football terms. He rushed for 1,271 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's a quiet 1,200 yards, if you ask me. Had 3.02 yards after contact per attempt. 4 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 weeks, 9 double-digit performances, had 7 bust weeks. When I say bust weeks, it was like 5 fantasy points or less, maybe 6 or less. Looking at the whole season overall, really, he was either going off, getting you double-digit points, or barely anything. But still, 1,200 yards rushing is nothing to shake a stick at. Looking at the trade analyzer, the calculator has him valued as a late first-round pick when compared to rookie drafts. When you're looking at just straight up currency for what you want with the picks and 1 QB, obviously it's a little different with 2 QB here considering the positional values, but you kind of get a gauge here. When we're looking at the trade finder, trades that actually happened on my fantasy league, him for Jerry Jeudy, him for Melvin Gordon and a first, him for DeAndre Swift, him for a first and third, him for Tyler Algier, 2 seconds and a third. Him for Terry McLaurin. So really, he's all over the place here. And this is really giving you an idea of what the market's doing. Obviously, you would like to see 100 trades, but we're not getting that. We're getting like 5 at the most, 6, 7 on the high, 3 or 4 on the low on most players. Him for Jerry Jeudy, I don't see that happening on most leagues. I think a lot of people are going to pivot to Jerry Jeudy due to his age, due to what he did at the end of the season. Melvin Gordon in a first is interesting considering the trade analyzer had him valued for a late first. So that kind of makes sense. Him and DeAndre Swift isn't going to happen anytime soon. So that was just a deal that just happened. First and the third sounds like the sweet spot. Because really when you're selling them, you kind of feel weird just giving them away for a first. You got to have some guts when doing that. But if you get a little bit of an insurance policy on the back end with a third, kind of feels good. Kind of feels like a good starting point. I don't think that you're going to get all the deals done with that, but it's a good starting point. You may have to back off that third and go with straight first, which I'm fine with. This is a good draft. Running backs deep. You'll probably catch a starting running back on the back end of that first round, if not a decent wide receiver in 1 QB leagues. You're probably going to get 3 or 4 starting wide receivers off the rip in this year's draft. Easy, if not more, because this is a tough draft class at the running back position. They got some tough guys. Him and Terry McLaurin, I can see a lot of people pivot to Terry McLaurin unless you really want to speculate on Miles Sanders. From what I gauged from the market, a first and some change you want to start out with, and you may want to just take the first depending on how you feel like it. I think 110, 108 is probably where you're going to get it. Obviously 101, 102, 103, 104, they're just going to take the players. They're just going to take those rookies. So really, 105 walked back as far as you can get it is where you're going to go in the first round. I like to call it the walk it back strategy. I'll just pick a spot in that round and I'll just go to each manager just to see who bites, just to see who takes me seriously, and just go from there. I try not to start too high, but also don't want to start too low. I think that's kind of obvious, but that's probably what I do. Looking at this, considering that the trade analyzer's got him valued as a late first. We're seeing a first and third seem like the most interesting thing here. We also got the 2 seconds and the third and Tyler Algier. If you're going to go 2 seconds, make sure one of those seconds are in the top part of the second round and the other ones mid part of the second round or higher. Because once you get to the back part of the second round, you might as well just call that a third round pick. When you're looking at hit rates, you're looking at hit rates of like 10% or less, maybe like 5% range. So the odds are very not good there, and the chances of Miles Sanders going to a good team could still happen. He's got some pop in his step. He just rushed for 1,200 yards, so you really can't just give him away either. But if you're doing 2 seconds, a prospect, and something else, make sure those seconds are on the top end. You don't want any back end second, because that might not even help you odds-wise when it comes to building your team. I know this is a stacked draft. There might be a player or two in the back end of that second round, but the odds will start to stack against you once you get that far down. He will be 26 years old. He's got over 2,000 snaps under his belt, so that's something you want to take into. We do not know where he's going in free agency. Right now, you just got to speculate with your gamble here. If you sell him now, you're selling him where you know where he's kind of priced at. If he has to wait in free agency, or if he goes to a less than optimal spot, you might take a little hit in value. Rookie draft value might increase to where the rookie picks are worth more than what they are now, to the point it's hard to get what you can get for Miles Sanders off the trade market. That's something you want to think about. Miles Sanders could go to a fantastic situation. What if he's projected to be the RB1 to the Chiefs, or he goes to the Bills and he's paired with James Cook or something like that? Then his value will increase a bit, but it's not going to go to the moon. It's not going to go up to Bijan Robinson territory. It's not going to go up to those top guys territory. He might give you that production. You may want to hold, or you may want to just sell too, see what you can get. Just kick the tires. Maybe you can get a reactionary trade. That's something you want to look at too as well. But there's a lot of options. Every league's different. Everything's fluid. That's why I never call a player buy or sell, because it's malpractice to do that, because we're talking about a market that is comprised of thousands of markets, which means there's a million variables out there that we have to deal with. And now going to our garbage pail kid, our cheap running back that we're looking at, that we want as a stash, or he's on the back end of our roster, and we need to know if we want to keep stashing or not. Today, we're going to look at Samaje Perine of the Bengals, 165th player off the board in ADP, RB55. He's 27 years old. Historic for running back standards in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Had 397 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns as a backup in Cincinnati. His value is consistent with him being a backup to Joe Mixon and getting that volume, because when he gets that volume on that team, it really ignites his flame for fantasy, because he can be productive when he gets the role, but he's going to be a free agent in 2023. So what is going to happen to him going forward? He was on a cheap deal with Cincy, 2 years, $3.3 million. So it's not out the realm of possibilities if they want to keep with consistency and just keep him on the roster. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. He's cheap. It might as well. He's 27. Or they might as well go to draft, get an even cheaper running back that they like off tape and roll with that. They're running backs. You can kind of plug them in, plug them out. So we got some options here. Or he goes to another team. He might not be kicking around the league much longer, but that is not a surprise anyways. I'm not really coming out of nowhere with new information, but his allure was a few times out of the year, he gets starter reps with the Bengals, and that gave you a couple productive weeks where you might be able to slide him in at flex, use him as a patch-up piece, or if you got him in best ball, that's awesome for you as well. I have him in a few best ball leagues, and those couple games out of the year, I got an RB1. So that is something cool about Samaje Perine, is that I loved him in best ball while he's in Cincinnati. So we just got to watch what he's doing. But looking at Trade Analyzer, they got him valued somewhere between a 3rd and a 4th round pick, somewhere in that range. So super cheap. A player who's pretty much free. Trade Finder, reviewing these trades, is pretty much free. Samaje for a 4th. Samaje for Andy Dalton in 2 QB. Samaje for Darrell Henderson. Samaje for a 3rd. Samaje for 2 thirds. Samaje for Kyron Williams. Just a garbage pail kid here. A free guy. If you want him, just get him as an add-on and deal. Don't go after him. Don't be giving him stuff away for him. If you're doing a trade with somebody, he's on the roster, just ask him as a throw-in. Hey, I know we're trading these 2 running backs together, but I see you got Samaje Perine right there. Can you just add him in as a throw-in? Can he be a cheap play for me? Let's just sweeten the deal up. Maybe you got to add in something else. Maybe not. That's up to you to decide, but that's what I would do. Maybe get him as a throw-in. If he's on waivers, pick him up. Most leagues probably not, due to Dynasty leagues being a little deeper, but you just have to make that decision. watch him in free agency. There's a chance he may not be in the league much longer, or he's on the Bengals and he's doing some Algier Ryan things in 2023. Just got to watch the tea leaves. But either way, even if he goes to a good situation, he's not moving more past a late third-round pick, top and fourth-round pick, and rookie draft value. It's not doing that. He's 27 years old, hasn't had a 500-yard season on his name in the NFL. So, honestly, he's going to be a cheap asset no matter what happens. So, he's not a sell. He's not a buy. He's just a free chip there. If you can get him for free, might as well if you can, if you want to. It's whatever you want to do. I have no opinions either way. Just a guy that can be stashed if you're interested in. Our first running back that we're going to talk about today is Breece Hall. He turns 22 in May. He's the 8th player being selected off the board in startup ADP, being drafted as the RB3. So he's already being valued as an expensive asset. He rushed for 463 yards and 4 touchdowns before the ACL injury, caught 19 passes for 218 yards and 1 touchdown. He had 2 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 weeks, and provided double-digit scoring in PPR in all 7 of his games. Other stats to note, he averaged 4.13 yards after contact per attempt, 7.7 yards after the catch per reception. From the combine, ran that 4.39 40-yard dash, 98th percentile size-adjusted speed score, was used heavily in the passing game, especially once he got infused in the offense. We saw what he could do. We saw him blow up in the open field. We saw him do a lot of good things. Dynasty gamers might be able to capitalize off the ACL injury this offseason, and I think the price tag's going to trickle up through the offseason as well as we get closer to him being healthy and on the field. So the closer we get to that time, the more his value will shoot up. He's still expensive, but in some leagues, let's say 1,000 of you watch this video, there's going to be a few of you might be able to catch him at maybe a 10% discount or something like that. Looking at the trade analyzer over on dynastyleaguefootball.com, and you remember the video we did with Kenneth Walker in it, valued very similar to him, worth less than the 101, but worth more than the 102. That's in both 1 QB and 2 QB. So that's the value you're going to have to work with. One thing you got to think about is, hey, you got to be creative. And 2, you're going to have to add to that 102, 103 pick if you want to get him. People aren't going to ship him away. On the flip side, considering he's an injured asset, considering these picks might increase in value going forward, we might see these picks hit a stall point because this draft has been talked up a good bit. So you might see the 102, 103 stall a little bit between now and the draft, or you might see it shoot up as well. The value might be already baked into these picks. We'll see what the market does when we get there, but also in some leagues, you'll just see some weird trades and you might be able to catch them at a discount. Someone might have rookie fever, and that's why you always want to kick the legs out of your league mates just to see if they got those feelings on somebody. But looking at the DLF Trade Finder, this app scrubs the trades on MFL, and we got some interesting ones. We got Breece Hall for a first and a second, Breece Hall for a first, second, third, and Wan'Dale Robinson, Breece Hall for John Mechie, first and third. It doesn't tell us whether it's like the 105, 102, 101, but imagine those firsts are up there. They're in January. None of these are in December, so imagine they know what they're getting. Breece Hall for Garrett Wilson, a second and a fifth. Breece Hall for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Breece Hall for Isaiah Pacheco in 2 firsts. He's expensive. We're expecting him to be expensive, and he's going to be expensive. We're not going to expect anybody to give him away. If we're expecting to catch a discount, look at the trades here. First and a second, probably 102 and a second. 102 and a second and a third, something like that. A player like this, he's still young. Even though he's coming back from injury, he's still young. We saw the athleticism. He already popped at the NFL level. He's already exploding. He's a guy to try and go get, but he's not going to be cheap. Nobody should be selling him on the cheap, and if somebody is, that's shame on them. I don't expect any of you guys to get him on the cheap, but I would expect to kick the tires just to see if you catch somebody sleeping. When you know, you know. So maybe your league doesn't trade that often, or you got some league mates in your league that doesn't trade too often as well, then I understand on that. But when the value changes or just a little bit, or you're skeptic always kick the tires. His value is going to increase throughout the offseason as he gets healthier from the knee injury, as he gets farther away from that. His value is going to increase as we get closer to the start of the NFL season, as we get closer to the middle of the season, whenever he's set to come back. He will increase in value to some degree. It might be at the same price, or it might be unattainable. Wherever it's at, it's going to be increased to some degree. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, maybe he's unattainable now in your league. It really depends. There's a million different leagues out there, and we know he's expensive, but how expensive? You got to kick the tires and find out. I got another running back here. He's a mid-tier running back that could hold some value here in the near future. Maybe one of the few running backs that may not get flipped on their head during this running back reset that we're experiencing here in 2023 and 2024, and a big shifting of the tide. And it might be just for the short term, but it's something that you might be able to utilize for your dynasty team. I'm talking about Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. He turns 25 in April. Right now he's being drafted as the 91st player overall and as the RB30. So like an RB3 range is where he's being drafted at. Last year, rushed for 682 yards and 4 touchdowns, 8 catches for 58 yards, missed some games due to injury, had 1 RB1 week, which was bonanza, had like over 30 fantasy points in that game, 2 RB2 weeks, so he has been productive, even with David Montgomery there. Also had 5 double-digit fantasy scoring games. David Montgomery is likely gone. I don't expect him to want to try and catch a discount. So imagine he's going to test the market. He averaged 3.67 yards after contact per attempt, which is very solid. He signed with the Bears through 2024. So you're going to get a 2023 and 2024 out of him. So he is a big staple of the team. They're going to allow him to get some runs. He's an incumbent there. They'll probably bring in somebody else. There probably will be some competition either through the draft or through free agency. I don't see David Montgomery really coming back because I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the right move to do, but you never know what happens. I'm not here to guess things about that, but I do see them bringing in somebody else. But I feel like most backs are in a committee anyways, and where he's being valued at might be a good thing anyways. He's being valued on the DLF Trade Analyzer as a late second round rookie pick, which is fine with me. This is where we're getting to the part of the draft where things get a little bit weird, where there's a separation of your running backs and wide receivers, and you're downstepping some tiers. Once the running backs start getting ugly off the board, once the wide receivers are not your thing, once you get that feeling, maybe you shoot an offer for them. That could be a late second. That could be the 302. That could be the 303. It's in your draft. It's in the moment. If you're into them, that's my suggestion. If you're not into that tight end that's there, the wide receiver, the running back, you're in that range, 211, 303, 304, 305, hell, let them tell you no. At least you shot your shot. But once you're in that range, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what running back they're wanting. You don't know how they got him valued. You don't know. Maybe you can shoot your shot there, or maybe it's too far back. You don't want to waste your time. I understand that. But once you're out of that range where the running backs are starting to fall off, that's when you want to go after them. You'll know. You'll know. We'll know after the draft. We'll have a good feeling. But that's where we're at here. That's what the late second is telling us, really. He is being valued when the running backs are starting to break in tier and there's not as much talent left on the board. That is where he's being valued at. That's what the market's saying. They're not saying late second. They're not saying 301. They're not giving you the exact pick. They're saying, hey, when this happens in the draft, this is when you probably need to go after him. That's what the market's saying by late second, early third roundish range. That's how I'm reading that. When scrubbing the trade finder, there's not a one-for-one trade. He's involved in a lot of bigger deals with a lot of players on one side, a lot of players on the other side. And honestly, when you have deals like that, you have to analyze them, and then there's a lot of other things you got to look at, and they become big packages that's hard to break down. Usually when they're one-for-ones, when you're talking about them on videos, you can kind of get a better feel. So I want to keep things nice and clean for you. There's no one-for-ones with him. He looks like a player that you would use to package up when you look at his value. Late second-round pick, mid-second-round pick, early third-round pick range. You add him to the player you're really using to get up to the player you want to package up with, and that's how you use them to get the deal done. I look for him to be a good value all offseason like he was last year, and you'll get some production. You know what you're pretty much going to get. You're going to get some productive weeks. You're going to get your ups and downs, but good RB3-ish, 4-ish, whatever, because Dynasty teams are different. They're built different. I talked to a guy the other day. He has 5 of the top 8 wide receivers, so the teams are built different. It's hard to speculate, but he's good to have on the back end of your roster after your top 2 or 3 running backs. He's a good guy to have on there. I got another running back that you can catch at a discount, and he is dirt cheap. And a lot of people are talking him up, so he's kind of taboo, but I figured I'd just throw him on this video anyway. That's Kenneth Gainwell from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's being drafted as the 143rd player off the board. RB44, turns 24 in March. Last year, rushed for 213 yards, 4 touchdowns, got 29 passes for 244 yards, had 1 RB2 week last year, 3 double-digit scoring weeks. Miles Sanders is hitting free agency. That doesn't mean he's in the clear, though. They could bring somebody in. This is a very, very, very deep running back class, so they can catch a good running back on the cheap this year, patch that hole up, and it's a deep running back free agency class, so he is not safe. No running back is really safe this year. Only maybe a couple. So that's something you got to think about. But there is some ambiguity to the situation. But the thing of what we're looking at here is the value and how cheap he's being perceived at. The trade analyzer has him being valued as a mid-third round rookie pick. That's dirt cheap. If the running backs or the prospects there is something you don't want, that's a guy you could potentially trade off to try and get a player that you can go after. I don't know if someone's just going to give him away at that price. That's one thing to note. Sometimes that asset on the person's team, you need a little bit more, but that feels kind of right. But trade negotiations might be a little bit different. Some of the trades I found, though, off the trade finder, Kenneth Gainwell for Ben Skowronek, Kenneth Gainwell, Teddy Bridgewater, 2 QB, Kenny Gainwell, Jerome Ford, and a 3rd. So he's cheap, but there's not many trades there. For example, he's usually involved in packages and deals. That's probably the best way to get him. If you're negotiating for a trade, much bigger players involved, and you're getting your main running back, you see him on their roster, maybe you can catch him as a throw-in. When you're seeing someone valued as a mid-third, late third, or something like that, probably the best course of action is get him as a throw-in in the deal. See if that can happen. Try to ask for throw-ins. That's not always going to work. Sometimes it makes things a little junky, but that's something you can try to do. Maybe you can sneak a couple players out of all your leagues, and it really depends on how many leagues you're in, who you're trading with. There's a lot of other scenarios other than this player's being valued this way and this player being valued that way. As for a sell or anything like that, there's not really much value right now. You can't really sell him and get much in return, so you might as well hold him or use him as part of your package piece or use him to package up and move up in the draft a couple of spots. I don't know how many spots you're going to be able to move up this year considering how these slots are being valued this year and how much more higher they're priced compared to previous years. But that's just something you could try. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but really just being objective here. With a player being valued in this range, you're really just going to have to be creative. He provides cheap depth, smaller back, can catch the ball in the backfield, very productive at Memphis, can be productive probably for short spurts. I guarantee he'll be in a committee there. I guarantee they bring in another back or something. They'll patch that up. So there could be a chance he's competing. I guarantee you there will be, but there is a potential that he may have some good games next year as well. But for the price, it's not really a horrible investment anyway since it's dirt cheap. Especially if you're catching him as just a throw-in. I've done that in a few trades, actually. I did catch him as a throw-in a few times over the year because he was just cheap and he just got thrown into the deal. I didn't really want him or needed him. I just asked for him. I knew that it was a chance, and I pulled the trigger, and I got him on a couple deals this year on much bigger trades. I was going after the other player. I think it was like TJ Hawkins or something like that. And I was able to pull Kenneth Gainwell with it as just a smaller piece with nothing nothing extra added on my end of the deal. Just as a throw-in, sometimes you just got to ask and be told no sometimes. It's just part of the sales technique. You just have to be told no a bunch of times until you get that one yes. Those couple yeses throughout the year is what's really going to reshape you over time. And it's hard. It's a lot of work sometimes when you're in a bunch of leagues and you're getting told no a lot. But eventually it works out for you, especially if you're working the trades. But for our top guy for this week, coming down in ADP, guy we're going to cover is Austin Ekeler from the Chargers. He turns 28 in May. He's being drafted as the 29th player off the board, and in ADP, he's the RB8. So he's holding some value still, even though he's not getting any younger. He had 11 RB1 games last year, 4 RB2 games, so very productive. He only had one where he was technically a bust, but he gave you 11.2 fantasy points still. So every game he played in, double-digit fantasy points. Astounding. 31% opportunity share, 19% target share, 51% share of the rush attempts, 62% snap share. Those ain't going anywhere as long as he's healthy. He's going to be the guy there. 2.92 yards after contact per attempt last year, so he was solid there. 109 catches and 717 yards. They did have a lot of injuries in the passing offense. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. We did see some injuries to the wide receivers that could have impacted the flow, allowing them to get some more targets. But again, this was a great season. In any other year, he's getting a lot of balls thrown his way. Very productive guy. You can't say that this was a once-in-a-lifetime deal. He's been productive his whole career. This was just a great season by him. Solid year. He will be an unrestricted free agent in 2024, which is going to be very interesting because he'll be 29 then. We'll be getting ready to turn 29. So the team's got some prep to do. We have a stacked running back class. We still got a stacked free agency class, even though we're losing a few guys due to the franchise tag. They may want to get an RB2, a backup there with some upside. See what happens. You still got Isaiah Spiller. You got Josh Kelly. But you may want to draft the guy. Get some competition back there. Again, it's a luxury right now because running backs are going to be cheap. You're going to get some cheap talent. That's something to keep an eye on. Maybe they're looking forward to that. Or maybe in the draft, a guy falls to them and they just say, hey, what the hell, we'll just do it. And they got that contract in mind. That also will give them some more leverage in negotiations if they want to pursue that. It just depends on what happens. They may just franchise tag them. That seems like the going ways right now with the running backs who are top tier. We'll tag them. We'll try and work out a deal. But for the long term, it's probably not going to be there. Long term, the odds are against him. The odds of him playing at age 31, 32, 33 is hard to imagine. So this is the time, if you want to deal him, you got RB8 and ADP, 29th overall off the board. This might be the time for you. This might be it. If you had an injury-riddled season next year, that might impact things. However, you also got production here for a year, maybe longer, that you might be able to take advantage of, especially if you're a top-tier team. If you're a bottom-dwelling team, should have been already gone. But let's look at the trade finder here at DLF. Look at some trades that went down. Josh Palmer and the 110. The 105 straight up. Aaron Jones and a 2024 second. The 211 and a 2024 first. Michael Pittman straight up for him. A 2023 first. 2023 first and Dalton Schultz. Guarantee those are not the 101. Maybe somewhere middle of the range of that first round. I doubt someone was going to deal or trade him away for like the 110, 111, 112. That's my rational thinking, even with Schultz thrown in there. Brock Purdy, Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson, 2 QB. Spin your wheels on that one. J.K. Dobbins in a second. Kyler Murray in 2 QB. That's an interesting one. He's an old, expensive asset. He screams sell, but he also seems like you can scream at a discount as well, depending on what's going on in your league. The trade calculator at DLF, the analyzers, got him valued as the 102. The thing is, the grease the wheels to get the deal done, considering his age, considering the market for these rookie draft picks, 105-ish, 104-ish, 106-ish, 103-ish, somewhere around there. Maybe like a 105 and something, maybe a 106 and something. Maybe another pick, maybe another player. Somewhere in that value range is probably going to be the sweet spot. We got a 105 straight up. My gut reaction is that a little light in the pants, considering he's 29th player off the board, RB8. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be ahead of him in ADP soon. He should already be. I think when they re-roll that, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be ahead of him. I think the RB2 in this class will be ahead of him. The RB3 is going to be pushing that, or going to be down a little bit in ADP, but we'll push that soon. Back half of the summer guaranteed. 2023 first, Dalton Schultz. Imagine that's the middle first. So first and Schultz. I don't want Schultz, but maybe like a player of that level, depending on what you want. Maybe a sneaky running back. Maybe like a Brian Robinson, a Pacheco, or maybe something like that. Something sneaky. Middle first and something sneaky. Maybe you can get that done. You just got to be creative here. 2 QB and Kyler Murray. I don't see that happening too often. Just analyzing these trades. Aaron Jones in a second. The thing is, that's kind of a lateral move. It just doesn't grease the wheels for me. Like, I'd rather just roll the dice and see if they just sign him for a 1 or 2 year deal or tag him for a bit. Just because I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is doing. He's older as well. I know what I'm getting from Ekeler as long as he's healthy. And as long as he's healthy is with any running back. So I'd rather just roll with Ekeler. I don't really care that much about the other pick. Michael Pittman. That's a decent pivot because it's a wide receiver. And wide receivers last a little longer. So that's something you could do, but maybe a wide receiver in that range. Maybe not just exactly him. Maybe one more expensive, a little less expensive, and something else. Something like that. Just be creative. Just think about it. You just got to think about the age, and you got to think about the age of your dynasty team, your competing window. If you're not competing now, and you're not going to be competing next year, what's the point? You really shouldn't be on your team, and really I shouldn't be saying this to you. So that's probably out of the discussion unless you really need to hear that from me right now. If you're competing and you got them, then of course you're probably going to hold on to them. Ride that horse. Unless you want to kick the tires, see what comes back to where like you can get enough pieces where you can continue to compete with. That's what I would do. I would look to see if I can get pieces where I can get youth on the back end, yet get another piece with that's productive, whether it's a running back, wide receiver, tight end, whatever. So I'm looking for production and youth, like in a package, like him for 2 or 3 players, him for a pick and a player, something like that, to where I'm good on the long term and I'm still getting production now. That's if I want to do that. Maybe I'm just going to go all in for the championship. It's really how you want to do it. Also, a lot of leagues, very hard trading. I hear in all these videos, but I understand. But I got to give you ideas. I got to help you out. I feel like the rookie drafts is when all the deals are going to go down. And I'm going to say that for all the players. I've been saying it all year. So let's just cut the horse in the tail right now. Rookie draft time is when you're going to get your deals done. And then also, for a player like this, that's a veteran right before the season, is when the value is going to spike up a little bit, because then the actual point scoring value will resonate in the market and it'll bump them up a bit. That's just how it usually runs. So those are the times to buy and sell, and then whenever you want throughout the season. Let's go on to our next running back. He is a younger guy. He was a rookie last season, but this market is crazy. Not everybody's safe. Only a few running backs. We're talking about Tyler Algier from the Atlanta Falcons. He's being drafted at 89th overall in startup drafts. RB29, so middle of the road. Got some value there. Last year, decent production considering he's on the Falcons. 3 RB1 weeks, 2 RB2 weeks. So there's 5 games with fantasy production there. 7 double-digit performances. So those are 7 games where you left feeling okay to good. That's what I visualize that for most people. 3.58 yards after contact per attempt. Over 1,000 yards rushing, but he caught 16 balls. That is not sexy. The depth chart here in Atlanta is Caleb Huntley, Cordell Patterson, Avery Williams. Per overthecap.com, they rank second in cap space with 6.6 mil. That usually changes by the day, but they're up there in cap space. We have a decent running back class in free agency and the draft. He is a late round pick, drafting the 5th round, day 3 guys. Day 3 guys are usually not safe due to sunk cost. So this could be interesting as we get through these next few weeks, next few months. So just think about Tyler Algier and his long-term dynasty value. This could be good and bad. If you want to buy him, if they bring in another back, you can catch him cheaper and get some production. Maybe it's a little bit lighter production, but still, it could be valuable to you. Again, they're more than likely going to bring in somebody else. Somebody in the draft could be cheap, or they could bring in somebody cheap in free agency. These running backs are not going to be super expensive once we get over the top tier guys. That makes him dangerous, but it could make him an opportunity as well because he was very productive at BYU. He could be the hammer while the other running back could be the lighter guy, catches passes. Maybe they get like a Tajay Spears, pair him up with Algier. That could be pretty fun to watch. Here's what the Trade Finder's saying about the market with him. Him for Matt Stafford, 212 and 2 QB. Him for the 202. Russ Gage, Jacoby Myers. A second in 2024. Mike Gesicki and a third. 212. Range is on their calculator for the analyzer. So he was dealt for a 202. Calculator's saying 212 range. Random second in 2024. So you're looking at a second round pick somewhere in value. Probably middle of the road to grease the wheels. Like, you're not going to give them away for a late second because that's where things are really going to be tiered off. Unless they bring in another running back, then that might scoop the value down that low. Like, you're really not going to just give them away. You really want something coming back at you. 202 seems a little high because you know there's high possibility there's going to be a decent running back there. And one of the wide receivers are probably going to be there as well. One of the guys that we kind of like, maybe like a Marvin Mims, maybe even like a Jalen Hyatt. There could be a wide receiver there with some decent draft capital, a second rounder, late first rounder that's going in that spot. Another running back with some day 3 draft capital, lower end, probably like a third rounder that everybody likes could be falling there. The 202's got some value. I don't see that deal getting done. More like 205, 206, 207, 208-ish, 212. Like, I don't see people really being quick to move them for that. Maybe if they really want that pick while the draft's going on, I feel like it's going to be a little bit higher. Like, you're going to have to grease the wheels a little bit. I feel like he's a risk right now because of this whole scenario. Like, you can sit there and say, hey, he was good last year. He did this, he did that, he did that. He was productive. Only caught 16 balls, though. Day 3 pick. Lots of running backs in the market. All it takes is this. I don't look at this as a league where most teams have one running back and they roll with it. So you better be cool with that running back sharing opportunities. If that makes you nervous, then you better just play the market. And the thing is here, you may want to just kick the tires, see what comes back at you. Either way. If someone goes in this backfield and you like them, then just try and buy them at a cheaper rate. I feel like 212 would be the starting point. Maybe cheaper, 3rd round, 4th round. Really depends on who goes there and how much they pay for that running back. There's a good chance. And if he goes unscathed, I look for his value to go up a bit. So you're playing the market here. The odds here are saying that they might bring somebody in. They don't have any sunk costs invested. They're looking to get some playmakers. They want this offense moving. They are hectic at quarterback right now. One thing is building up the run game can help that. You already got some receivers there. They might bring in some more receivers, but you got Pitts, you got London. What else can you pay up for? What else can you pay up for? There's other positions and stuff, but that running back position, there's going to be some discounts this offseason that really is going to help you out. And a lot of teams are going to have those opportunities, and not many running backs are going to be left unscathed. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities for these NFL teams to catch a decent talent to work in their backfield to really help move the chains. And this is going to be a really fun offseason to watch. But we have a free agent running back that we're going to talk about today that could make some changes. Could be the guy playing with Tyler Algier because they could make a good 1-2 combo just with how they both play the game differently. They kind of fit together like a puzzle piece. And he's going to be a free agent. Devin Singletary, formerly from the Buffalo Bills, 25 years old, being drafted as the 171st overall pick. RB 54, 54th running back off the board. Last year had 4 RB1 weeks, 4 RB2 weeks. Free agent this offseason in a tough market. We got to see how long he's sitting on free agency. We got to see where he goes, what backfield he goes to. And there's a lot of speculation here. Not going to be the feature back. He's going to have to go to a team that's going to get him the right amount of snaps, right amount of touches out of the backfield. Right quarterback, because you know who gives the targets is the quarterback, not the coaches. So you got to look at that Some quarterbacks just want to throw YOLO balls, and then there's other quarterbacks that dish out 25% of their targets to the running backs. You want to look into that as well. On the trade finder, not many trades, but most of them are just for a 2023 third. He's got a bunch of those. And then one for Josh Palmer, who's probably worth somewhere around there, a little lighter. Mid-third on the trade calculator. So third round pick is what his going rate is. That's just enough to know. Third round somewhere, probably in the middle, somewhere around there. So that is a value that you're just taking a chance on. Things are going to tear off in the rookie drafts around there. You're going to have some good tight ends. You might catch a late round wide receiver you like. You might catch some good trendy running backs you like. So Singletary himself, very speculative. He's not going to be a feature back anywhere. He's 25 years old. He's going to be going to a new team. A lot of ambiguity here. If you have him on your roster, more than likely you're just waiting to see how free agency goes. If you're wanting to trade for him, anytime's a good time because his price isn't going to go up much higher. If he goes to the Chiefs, it might. Maybe they look at him and be like, this is what we want Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be. We need a guy like this. He is very dependable. We want dependability. Dependability plus Isaiah Pacheco, kind of nice. Reset us in age a little bit because Jarrett McKinnon was kind of old. That will spike up his price. Something you don't want to bank on. There's 31 other teams. You're just waiting on the market. You're waiting on the market. I don't hear about many people diving in to the Devin Singletary stock because they think it's going to go to the moon. So really, he's just going to be a cheap guy. Cheap guys, we do cheap guys things. We either sell them for cheap picks or we try and buy them with cheap picks. And it's what you want to do. And there's only a few cheap backs you can go after a year. He might be one of them. He might go to a spot where he can just give you solid depth. And that's all you're hoping for out of him. And maybe you'll get a few more. Maybe you'll get a few RB1 weeks wherever he goes. Maybe a couple RB2 weeks. Last year you got 8 productive weeks out of him, which is solid. Still good. And maybe he goes in offense where he can give you 8 more, 5 more, 6 more. Maybe that can happen. You spend a 3rd, 4th round rookie pick, that might happen for you. You might be able to get him for a 4th round rookie pick once we start drafting. That's the thing. Depending on where he goes, though. Depending. A lot of possibilities. What if he goes to the Eagles? How do you feel about that? What if he goes there? What if he goes to Cincinnati? How do you feel about that? What if he goes to Cleveland? Well, how do you feel about that? There's just a lot of places. There's a lot of places he could go. What if Dallas cuts Zeke and he plays with Pollard? Just random possibilities. You can really name almost any team in the NFL because you need more than one running back. You need multiples. What if he goes to Seattle? What if he's sharing the backfield there? Just anywhere, really. Really, if you think about anywhere he can go and be a side piece to the starting running back or just mix in. So really, he can go anywhere and probably give you close to production or some production or be a spot producer or however you want to think about it. But the days of people staking their claim as him being a future RB1, that's been long gone. That's never coming back. He's just a cheap running back that you're picking up, hoping that you get a little bit of something out of. He's a cheap running back that you might sell because you want to get back into the draft. I would use him as a placeholder to package up with. Like, say, I have my 3rd round pick. I want to try and get to the early 3rd, back in the 2nd. I'll use him, maybe something else. Maybe I want to move up a little bit in the 2nd round. I'll use him and maybe something else. Maybe if I need a sweetener to make sure I get that deal done to move up in the 1st, maybe I'll have him in as a throw-in. Stuff like that. That's what I see how he's used best in trade. If I'm going after this running back, this top-tier wide receiver, I got my package together, but I feel like I need to add something. He's on my roster. Maybe he gets thrown in there. That's how I see him best dealt. 1 for 1, it's not going to deal you much return. And buying him, it's just cheap. And the cheapest way to get him is as a throw-in-ish. He's a little bit more expensive than a throw-in, but he still is very cheap where you might be able to get him as a throw-in in some deals. You just got to be creative. You just got to just kick the tires at this one, see what comes back at you. Our first top running back off the ADP as we're going down the list by the week is Josh Jacobs. He's 25 years old, being drafted in startups as the RB9 per ADP and as the 34th player overall off the board. Last year, he went off. Over 1,600 yards rushing, 9 RB1 weeks, 2 RB2 weeks. He's on the franchise tag right now, so we got another season with the Raiders. The offense is probably going to look a little different, but they're probably going to use him to death. They're probably going to use him as the workhorse for another season. The only question is, can he hold up another year? There has been injuries off and on throughout his career. Can he hold it down? But he has been very productive throughout his career as well. So this is a running back that might spark some interest. When he's a free agent next year, he'll be 26 years old. Will he be back with the Raiders? Will he be moving on free agency? We just have to see what this year does because things are very ambiguous in the running back landscape. But to the trade market here, on the calculator, on the trade analyzer at DLF, he's valued as the 102, the second rookie pick off the board there. Not quite Bijan Robinson, as he is the RB1 in startup drafts right now per ADP. And on actual trades per their trade finder, being traded for the 107. Another deal has him traded for the 105 and a second. Another deal, James Robinson, Dallas Goedert, a 201 and a 202. Another deal, a 2024 first and second, and Isaiah Pacheco. Another one, a 2024 first, second, and third, then John Mechie. Another one, DK Metcalf, straight up. Another one, Stephon Diggs, straight up. Another deal, a 2024 first and a 206. Devonta Smith, straight up. A 2023 first and second, a 2024 second, and 2 threes. Fundamentals say here, if you're in the middle of the road in your league, or you're a bottom dweller, you're rebuilding, retooling, then it's a sell for you. However, if you're in the hunts, feel like you're top 3, feel like there's a good chance you might win a league, looking at these deals here, you might be able to catch a productive running back at a decent price point. And things aren't always one way when a player's a buy or sell. It really depends on your situation here. Again, this time next year, I'll be around 26 years old, hitting free agency. It's got a lot of wear on the tires. So we don't look at this as a long-term play. But right now, you can catch something back at you if you're in the back end of your league. You're not expecting to compete until like 2025, 6, 7, something like that. You probably should already dealt them in season, honestly. But right now it's in the works. You might be able to catch something. Some of these deals are kind of light too, like he's going undervalued. You can also tell that some of these managers are trying to be creative when they're trying to get the deal done. The 2024 picks that you're seeing a lot of these trades, that's happening because the 2023 class is heavily valued. So you're going to see that with some of these vets because they're trying to get creative to get these deals done. That's what the market's telling us. So you might have to be creative if you're trying to deal them away. If you're trying to buy them, I would be looking at a first and some change. And that change might be your second round rookie pick. That might be a player like Isaiah Pacheco, John Mechie with something else added to it. Or if you're trying to deal them away too, Devonta Smith, a player that caliber in that range. A young wide receiver is a good pivot too if you don't want to go with a buffet of picks. But I would look for picks and players, buffet of picks, young players come back at you. If I'm looking to buy, it looks like it's going to be a first and some change. The 102, like the calculator says, isn't really happening in much deals. You're looking at people being creative with him when they're trying to purchase him. Next year's first, a little something with that. Maybe next year's draft or something like that. Somebody did that, a first, second, and third. I mean, a fourth and fifth. What more else is that for real? So really, your next year's draft in a player, maybe that's if you need that production. It's really on your situation. If you need that extra running back, say you got a good running back, you want him as your RB2 or your RB1B or whatever, that might be the deal to get if you're looking to get the production now and you don't care about the rookies. You're here for the now. If you're here for the tomorrow, you got some options here. You're going to have to be creative. That's how it's looking like when it comes to buying them. The best time's now, right before the season starts. His value's going to go up a little bit. When it comes to selling, rookie draft time. Rookie draft time's when the picks are going to go up in value. Maybe in season as well when he's getting the production or right before the season. There's a lot of more opportunities when selling a player like this. Buying, though, his price is going to go up right before the season starts. And if he's getting production in season, which he will, because he's going to be the lead horse until something happens. Hopefully it doesn't. But you never know. Running backs are running backs. But going to our next running back here is another guy a lot of people like. We're in the middle portion of his career, and we're at a crossroads where things could happen one way or another. We're talking about Antonio Gibson. Soon he'll be 25 years old. He's being valued as the RB37 in ADP, 112th player off the board per ADP. So he does have some value. Last year, he had 2 RB1 games, 5 RB2 games, 11.1 PPR points per game, but 14 points per game or so in his previous 2 seasons. So he has been productive throughout his career, giving you average double-digit fantasy points, sharing the backfield right now with Brian Robinson. He's going to hit free agency in 2023. Wouldn't be surprised if this team takes a mid to late round pick at running back. Wouldn't be surprised, but I'm going to say that for almost every team, even if they're loaded at running back, because this is the draft to do that. And then the back part of the draft, teams will take shots for depth, and this is a dangerous draft class for the late rounder. So that late round running back could spark something. Trade market right now, calculator saying a mid-second. And with that being said, when we look at the trade market, there are not many one-for-one trades. And I don't like talking about multiplayer trades because that gets sticky to present to you guys and hard to capture the value because now that you're getting into situations here. But not many one-for-one trades, and really because you got to be creative because his value is not matching the upside and you're scared to get rid of the upside. Here are a few trades that went down. Adam Thielen in the 302, Nico Collins in the 312, Cortland Sutton. So they don't seem too appealing, but it really depends on what you want. At his price, you're using him as a package up piece. So you're using him, another player, him, another pick and player, him and another pick to either move up in your draft or move up the board to get the player you want. You're using him plus something else to get what you want, whether it's a better wide receiver, an upgrade at running back. That's how you're doing it. If you're buying him, you're trying to get those deals that we just read off. You're trying to get something like that. You're trying to sneak them away. And honestly, that's just how that works. You're just trying to catch players on the cheap. And that's why I go over this trades with you guys and give you some ideas on market value. Mid to late second on the calculator seems just right. I'm not going to really just dish him away for a third when I can just hold him unless there's a player in draft at the third that I want that I value a lot higher. Unless that happens, but honestly, it's probably not going to happen. Mid to late second seems right because early second, you're going to have some good values compared to other drafts. That's like a mid-first, late-first that's valuable. So honestly, that seems right. Getting deals done, you're going to have to be creative because not a lot of people are making deals with them. So more than likely, you're going to hold them. More than likely, you're going to hold them and see what happens unless you want to be creative or take a haircut, because that's what's going to happen. But if you're trying to trade for him, I would just try and sneak him away. And during the draft is probably where you're going to do so if you're trying to get him. Once your tiers come off the board, where you're at in a good spot, maybe you can sneak him away. But this is a player you're just trying to sneak away with. Next player off the board is a cheap guy. Bottom of ADP, a bottom dweller. Usually we're saying the same thing about these players, but we have to cover them because the back end of the roster on our Dynasty leagues matter, and some of us are in super, super deep leagues. Today we're talking about Travis Homer. That's how deep we're going. Soon he will be 25 years old, RB 88 per ADP, 236th player off the board. He's still getting drafted, damn it. 453 rushing yards and 1 touchdown in 4 seasons. It's not sexy. Signed a 2-year deal, $4 million deal with the Bears. They have Donta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, Trestan Ebner on the roster right now. And we got the draft that could make things murky for damn near every NFL team. And you can draft a 7th round rookie in this year's draft. It could make things kind of hairy for just about any roster clogger. Trade market says he's dirt cheap. Calculator says he's a 5th round pick. He's on waivers in most leagues. In some leagues, he's just a back in the roster guy. If you have to have him, he's just a throw in on the trade. More than likely, you're just going to let him sit. You're just going to watch the tea leaves throughout the season and camp, and then you'll just pull the trigger when it's ready. Let this dog lay and pick up if the attrition rolls his way. Right now, it's pretty risky right now with the draft, and you know what? He's free. If you're making a deal currently and he's on the roster, you got a spot on your team to take on the roster spot. A lot of us are in some deep leagues, some 16-teamers. We're starting 6 wide receivers still, and we got some flexes. I understand, and you can get him as a throw-in just to see. Just see. After all, the Bears are a little bit ambiguous. That kind of makes sense. More ambiguous the roster, the more you want to buy in on the bottom dwellers there, the RB3s, the RB4s. So that's something you want to look at, especially if you're in a deep, deep dyno like that. So I don't mind doing that. I'm in some deep ones. And he might be sitting there in some leagues of mine as well, just waiting, because I am in some incredibly deep leagues. So if you're in that situation, that's when you'll get him as a throw-in. Your basic league, you're starting 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, maybe a couple flexes or whatever, however you do it. 12 teams, probably not rosterable, unless you have an extension on your bench or something. Probably not rosterable. I don't imagine that. I'm in so many leagues, things that scale. Sometimes thinking off the rip on these videos is kind of hard. Probably not rosterable in the basic leagues. But on those deep leagues that are crazy, you're looking at a guy on the back end, and you're just hoping for the best. And since this is an ambiguous running back core, ambiguous offense all the general, you might want to look at him. First running back we're going to talk about today is a veteran who popped off last year going through an injury, but now is on the comeback and is in a grand situation. We're talking about Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys. And how we do this, we take a player from the top of the ADP, we go to middle ADP, and we go to the bottom ADP. This guy's at the top as we've been working down here from this offseason, and he's being valued as the RB12 in ADP, 34th player off the board right now per ADP. He's 26 years old, so he's not the youngest running back, but he's not at the end of his days either. So he's starting to get there. So it really depends on where you're at and building your team. He will be a free agent at the end of 2024. At that time, he will be 27 years old. That's a marker you want to look at his player profile for the long term. He's coming back from a fractured tibia where he had surgery on. So we got to see how he recovers, how good he comes back. Last season, he had 6 RB1 games, 4 RB2 games, averaged 15.6 PPR points per game. That's per Rotoviz. Had over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, caught 39 balls for 371 yards. One of the most productive running backs in all of football last year. A lot of people love him. Good size, adjusted athleticism. On the trade analyzer over at DLF, he's worth more than the 104 and 1 QB, and he's worth around the 107 and 2 QB. Players in his range per the trade analyzer: Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, Ramondre Stevenson. So those are some other running backs that you can look at if you're trying to make some trades. That's what it's saying in the value. And then here are some real trades that happened off the trade finder. So he was dealt for the 110 and the 208. He was dealt straight up for the 108. He was dealt straight up for the 107. He was dealt straight up for the 105. He was dealt straight up for Drake London. He was dealt straight up for 103 and a second. Him plus the 108 for the 104 in Superflex, a 2024 first and a second. So his value is kind of expensive, but I like him for redraft. I like him for the now. I like him for next couple years maybe. The future's getting stacked against him though due to age. We got to see what he's going to be looking like for the long term, but he is an expensive short-term option for your Dynasty team. Could be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. But we're not looking for the long haul. But he has proven he can be very productive. And that production is also driving the market. But also, he could be more expensive compared to what he was doing last year as well. Typically, running backs with his profile who pop off, they kind of go over the moon in value. That's not happening right now due to him coming back from the injury. You can also look at this as a discount as well, because you're looking at a running back in a good offense who's going to get a boatload of touches in the passing game and in the run game, and also has the athleticism to really pop off. I like Tony Pollard. I like him for the short term. However, if I'm in the middle of the road or I got a rebuilding team, I probably got to look away. There's good value here, though, to sell off if I'm not in it to win it. Say I'm not here to compete and I'm not really going to be there till like 2026 or so. He's going to be old by then, and then the value is going to be zapped. There's going to be a lot of question marks for the long term. That's something you want to look into. Same thing for this next running back. He can be productive this year. He has been productive throughout his career, off and on. He's an older veteran who has dealt with some injuries, but can also come back and string you some games here. We're talking about David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. He turns 26 in June, RB 34 in ADP, 96 overall. So not super expensive. So a player you can catch at a discount if you want something for the now. Back in 2021, he had an ADP of 33 overall, so he has fallen a little bit from 33 to 90 some. 9 RB1 games in the last 2 years with the Bears. Now he's in Detroit on a 3-year, $18 million deal. Team has an out on his contract at the end of 2024, so that's something to look into. So this may be more of a 2-year deal for him. The Lions did draft Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. They are planning to use him, but that does not mean David Montgomery won't get enough touches to have some fantasy relevancy, to give you some spot performances, to give you something on the back end. And everything's according to price. You're looking at RB34, 90-something overall. So that's something if you want to go cheaper at running back, if you want to patch it up at running back and just hammer wide receivers and get somebody a little later, that's somebody you might want to look at depending on what else is available. Monty's Dynasty stock is now getting very interesting. Looking at the Dynasty Trade Analyzer, he's going for the 201 in 1 QB leagues, 207 in 2 QB leagues. So mid to early second round rookie pick-ish looks like to be the value per the DLF Trade Analyzer. Dalton Kincaid, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Hopkins are players that they have in the value there. And then real trades that are going on right now. He's been dealt straight up for Greg Dulcich, 205 straight up, David Njoku straight up, 301 straight up, 302 straight up, Mari Cooper straight up, 211 straight up, 202 straight up, Cole Kmet, and the 109 straight up, 1-for-1. So you're getting a lot of volatility and value here, which makes a lot of sense considering where he's at, considering Jahmyr Gibbs, considering the offense. Very ambiguous, a lot of unknown here. So some people are paying up late first, early second, some people paying early third, some people are willing to deal him out. Some people want to hold on to that value. You're really just going to have to kick the tires and see the market on this one. But again, he's a cheap asset that you can have for the now. You're not expecting him to go over the moon in production, but you're expecting to get something maybe. You're expecting to get something because he is going to get some volume. We know this team can move the football. We know this team likes to use their running backs. And David Montgomery is a player that might excel in this offense, and you might get something out of him for the next couple years, and the value is there, and it's kind of cheap. Again, if you're rebuilding and you're not in it to win it now, this is a player you kind of want to stay away from, because if it takes you 2 years to be able to compete, to be one of the top dogs in your league, he's going to be old by then. The value is going to be zapped, and the odds of him helping you out is not going to be great, and the values here right now, it's starting to trickle down, but you still got some value where you can get a little bit younger, but that's on what you can do in your league. On the low end of the spectrum of ADP, we have another older running back who's now in a new situation in an ambiguous depth chart where he needs to produce now, do something now in camp for him to give us something in fantasy. I'm talking about Ronald Jones of the Dallas Cowboys. We just talked about Tony Pollard, but Ronald Jones right now, RB 82 in ADP, 233rd overall. So he's falling out of some drafts, depending on how shallow the league is. He is going on waiver wire, depending on how shallow the league is, or he's a deep flyer in some leagues. He turns 26 in August. 3 RB1 weeks in the last 3 years. Not since 2020 has been productive. So this guy has not churned out production for quite a while. 2020 doesn't seem too long ago, but it is. Cowboys depth chart right now is Tony Pollard, Malik Davis, Deuce Vaughn, Rico Dowdle, plus him. Of course, they can bring in more competition as the market gets cheaper throughout the summer. But Ronald Jones has an opportunity here. He has to play well in camp. He has to move up the depth chart in camp for him to be productive for us in fantasy football. So this is a speculation play on the cheap because this offense can turn out some production at the running back position. Again, he's on a 1-year deal. Trade Analyzer has him going for a 4th and 5th round pick in rookie drafts. You may want to just draft the rookies there if you want, depending on what's there and what you want to do. Trade Finder. Bidding money is what he's being traded for. Nobody's really valuing him. He's being traded for bidding money. 405 straight up, 502 straight up, the 410 straight up, a 2024 4th, 411 straight up, This guy's going for a song. It's just what cheap player do you want to speculate on is really what we're asking here. Is it Ronald Jones? Is it another guy? What end of bench guy are you willing to speculate on? I can make stories for you guys if you want. There could be attrition in this depth chart in camp or something, and he just gets anointed. He could just come back to his old self. He has been dealing with injuries in his career. He could start getting that pop back in his step. And you know what? He becomes the RB2, RB3, and then attrition happens mid-year, and then you got something out of him. You're not going to get anything out of him long term. That is not in the cards. That is not in the cards. We're not going to be going into 2025 with Ronald Jones on our Dynasty rosters. That is not in play. You're just hoping to get something out of the ordinary out of him mid-season. That's what you're hoping. Maybe a few games. And maybe that can leak into the next year if you're lucky. Odds are against this, but the odds are against anybody being valued as a 5th-round pick. Who are you going to spend your 5th-round pick on? Are you going to speculate on this guy? Are you going to speculate on this rookie? What are you going to do with that? Are you going to move it for another pick? That's the question here. That's the question at the end of these videos. When we look at the cheap player here, Ronald Jones is not an exception to that. But the first running back we're going to look at today from the top end of ADP, because we go from the top ADP and we're working our way down throughout the summer, is Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. Right now he's 27 years old, signed through 2024 with the team, but has an out at the end of the season on his contract due to dead cap. Right now he's being drafted 42 overall in ADP, RB 14. Players drafted in this range is Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, TJ Hockenson, Chris Godwin, and Jordan Addison. Last year had 7 RB1 weeks, 4 RB2 weeks, and 11 double-digit PPR performances. He averaged 16.7 PPR points per game, high of 32.3 points, and a low of 8 points. All in all, he's pretty consistent. Rushed for 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, caught 27 balls for 239 yards. Very productive last year. One of the most productive running backs in the league. As we all know, Kareem Hunt is now gone, and Jerome Ford is the backup for at least now. So, looking like he's going to get a large workload there in Cleveland. But going to the trade analyzer, looking at his value on the calculator, in 1 QB leagues, he's valued more than the 104, but less than the 103. So, about pick range wise, 104 plus a late second, early third round range and picks there. In 2 QB Superflex leagues, 107-ish. That's about where the value is. I don't feel like the market is really going to be this aggressive considering it's rookie fever time, and the trends from what we've read from other players on previous videos says otherwise too, especially with win now players on this archetype. So going to the trade finder, and what we're looking at here is a 2024 first on one deal. Another one was straight up for DeAndre Hopkins. Another one was straight up for George Pickens. Another one was straight up for a 2025 first. Jordan Love in 2QB, 201. 2024 first on multiple occasions, a 109. Tajay Spear and Rashad White. DeAndre Swift, 2 2025 firsts. Jamal Williams, 2024 first and a second, and then more of 2024 first. That seems like being the going right here is the 2024 first. That's just what we're seeing pop up more from league to league to league. So that might be what we're seeing as the average price for him, which is less than what we're seeing on the calculator. Some trades are cheaper than others. Some trades are more expensive than others. That's just something you're going to see. But again, if you need a running back that is productive this year, check the deals out, see what you can get in your league, kick the tires, see what comes back at you. However, if you're a rebuilding team, stay away. Don't draft, don't select, don't trade for, don't do it, because by the time your team's built up, he's going to be on the outs. More than likely, should be. If you need short-term production, look for the best price in your league's market for these older running backs who are on the top end, who are productive or looking like they're going to get a good workload this year. And short term could be 1, 2, 3 years. 3 years seems to be average. 2 years seems to almost be average these days for running backs. But when you're looking at these older running backs who are productive, like a Nick Chubb, check out the price, because sometimes they're more expensive than what you think they are, and it's just different from league to league. We're looking at good producers who are eventually going to run dry. What's the best deal can I catch for these running backs is what we should be asking. What's the best deal can I catch when I'm looking for a running back? when it comes to selling these running backs. You just want to kick the tires and see what happens. When it comes to these older running backs who hold value, you just want to kick the tires, see what happens. You know your team. You know what you want to do with it. You know how it's built. You know whether it's win now or not. You know your league. You know if you need this production now or if you don't. And you know what the comeback's going to be like. We looked at these trades. You're looking at a 2024 first. Hopefully you can catch more than that, because you want to catch more than value. Everybody wants to do that with every negotiation and every trade, and that's okay to do that. That's okay. 2024 first, on average, is what we're seeing here on the Trade Finder. You can say he's worth more or less, but that's what we're seeing. The goal is, if you're going to deal a player, you want to catch more than that average value. That's what you're trying to do. You want to try and buy him cheaper than the average value. That's what you're trying to do. More than likely, you're going to meet in the middle somewhere, and that's what it looks like. The next running back we're going to look at has been in the league for a few years now, has seen some production, but injuries has hampered him a bit. Elijah Mitchell of the 49ers. He's 25 years old, RB48, 145th overall in ADP, signed through 2024, but remember, he's a 6th-round pick on a cheap contract, and the team has no sunk cost to him. That's evident considering they traded for a Christian McCaffrey. However, we're looking at him as a different asset now compared to like a year and a half ago. However, when he's on the field, we're looking at a player who has an 86th percentile speed score, 88th percentile burst score, 81st percentile agility score. So we're looking at a good athlete. So even with the opportunity being limited, when attrition hits, there could be more opportunity. Also, when you're this fast, all it takes is one carry for you to bust off a big one for a touchdown and be fantasy relevant. So those spike weeks could happen, and then you're looking at players being drafted at a cheap rate, 145th overall. So that value is going to be there. So it's really, what do you want to spend these cheap picks on? Looking at the trade calculator, valued as a mid-third in all formats. 1 QB, super flex is where it's going at, somewhere around in that range. Then we're looking at real trades off the Trade Finder per MFL. 3rd-round pick from 2025, a 4th-round pick from 2024. Those are straight up in 2 different deals. Zach Moss and Drew Lock. Devin Singletary straight up. Evan Ingram straight up. A 2025 second. Used to move up 3 to 5 spots in multiple different trades and multiple different drafts. Sean Tucker straight up. 308. So very close to what we're seeing on a calculator. We're seeing a little bit of different values in some of these trades. But overall, around 3rd and 4th round range. Cheap back end player to get for the back end of your roster. Just a cheap guy to get. And what do you want to spend those cheap picks on? What do you want to do? Do you want to get a veteran with some upside? McCaffrey's not the youngest back out there. He hasn't been bulletproof from injuries either, so he could catch some opportunity throughout the year. And then once we get into season here, running backs pop off sometimes for 1 or 2, 3 game stretches, sometimes like that. You never know what's going to happen. It's good to have these athletic backup running backs on your roster, and he's at a price where you could possibly pay for that. However, at that price too, there's other players to look at. There's other things to do. 3rd round's pretty deep in this year's draft, so there might be a player you'd rather have that's young, that you can build around, that you can have for a long time. But we're also looking at a player here with a running back in front of him that's had some injuries on him. He's got some mileage. He might catch some opportunities sooner or later. It could be like week 8, 9, something like that for a couple weeks. And you got that backup running back who's got some speed to him on a team that can move the ball a tiny bit and could get some opportunity. That's what you're looking at here. Again, it's not a guy you're going over the moon for. He's cheap right now and really want to just kick the tires to see what happens. Moving on to this other running back, a lot cheaper. Similar situation, but a little bit more murkier. Similar athleticism, but a little different. Similar but different. Similar but different. But we're looking at Pierre Strong of the Patriots. 24 years old. 25 years old by the end of the season. So age is creeping up there, even though we're in year 2. RB68 in ADP. 206 overall. Patriots roster right now at the running back position. Ramondre Stevenson, James Robinson, Ty Montgomery, Kevin Harris. Kevin Harris, remember that name because a lot of people on the channel in the comment section likes that guy. He's also a big, thick, bruising running back who could be a sneaky guy. This is also a murkier situation than what's expected here. So it could be hard treading water, but there's also some upside here because you're talking about a running back with 95th percentile speed score, 86th percentile burst score, 76th percentile agility score. So this guy's an athlete. But draft capital, day 3, 4th rounder, high-end producer at a small college. So there is some stuff to look at here in his prospect profile that could allow him to go boom. Situation saying, hey, some things are going to have to happen. Ramondre Stevenson's the guy here. He's going to get the workload. Nothing is going to take away from that, really. We do know the Patriots like to use multiple running backs. We've seen that over the history of time. However, something's going to happen here because Ramondre Stevenson was the lead dog here in the backfield. But attrition happens here. We've seen running back groups get decimated. And at 206 overall, RB68, you're not betting on that. You're just taking a speculation piece just in case that happens. But you can really say that to some of the other running backs here on the roster too at various price points. But going to the trade calculator here, taking a look here, and he's being valued for a strong 3rd and 4th round rookie pick per that. And then on the trade finder, you're catching some discounts. Justin Ross straight up. Tyler Algier straight up. 309 straight up. Chase Claypool straight up. So there's some things you can do. Also, DJ Dallas 303. Other picks you can make. Other trades you can make. A cheap guy to get if you want to speculate. He's a cheap speculation piece. What do you want to do with the cheap capital on your team? What do you want to do with the back end? Do you want to turn and burn it? Do you want to use that 4th round pick and get a veteran like this who has some spots in his profile where you can see where he can go boom? But you know attrition's got to happen for him to work, and he also has to play well for that to happen. He has to play well in camp. He has to work his way up the depth chart a little more. He has to do some things, so things are a little bit murkier than expected. But again, it's just cheap speculation, and there's all kinds of players in the league you can do that on. We have an athletic profile you can do that on. He's got some stuff here that you can look at, but all in all, things have to happen for him. Things have to happen because it's not going to be insert player, let's go. But those are cheap bets you have to make, and we always have one on a video that we got to talk about. Usually it's the same thing. There's something in this guy's profile that you can look at. However, this, and this has to happen. So who are you choosing to get? Because you can't get everybody. Who are you choosing to get with that 4th round rookie pick? Are you drafting a guy? Trading for a guy? You flipping guys around to get this guy? The same thing here. He's a speculation guy. You can see where the upside can be. Things do have to happen here for him to jump up in value for Dynasty, for him to be productive. However, attrition can be the thing because that happens with a lot of backfields throughout the season, and you do want to roster some talented backups just because of that. The cheaper, the better, and that's with all positions and everything else in life. You just want to be as cheap as possible and frugal as possible. It's a frugal running back to look at if you're looking for a speculative asset that is super cheap. This week at the running back position, we're starting to work our way down a little bit, and we're going to be looking at Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. He's 25 years old. Right now in ADP, he's valued as the RB13. 40 overall right now in drafts. He had 7 RB1 weeks last year, 4 RB2 weeks. He averaged 15 points per game. This is all per RotoViz. Had 83 targets last year, 3rd most among running backs, and a 33% opportunity share. Damian Harris is gone, so that should hold steady or more than likely increase. So that's something good. He's also signed with the team through 2024. So 2 more years. We have him as a Patriot before we have to worry about the contract. Now we're going to go to the DLF Trade Analyzer, see his value here, how he's being valued on the calculator. And 1 QB is worth more than the 104, but less than the 103. So if you add it kind of together with the value, more like the 104 and a mid-seconds. So maybe like an early mid-ish first and a mid-second, somewhere in that range. And 2 QB around the 107 range. A little bit past the mid-range of the first round, but right around there, maybe the mid-first-ish, however you want to grade that out. In value, that's what the calculator is valuing him at. You take your stance on that however you want to do it, but going to the trade finder with actual trades on my fantasy league, he was traded straight up with Calvin Ridley. Also, Zach Evans in 2024 first, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny and Geno Smith. This is in 2 QB. 110 and 202. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Brandon Ayuk. Jordan Addison straight up. 111 and a 2024 second. So looking at these values, there are some deals where he's more expensive than others. He's also a running back where you got a couple years left. He's one of the few running backs in the league where you just look at him, he's going to get a ton of workload. When you're looking at his short-term workload here compared to his price, probably one of the cheapest running backs that you can get per touch basis in 2023 versus Dynasty cost. So if you're here for the short term, which you should be for most of these running backs, I look at him as a short-term get, and I look for almost every running back as a short-term get. Looking at the contract, you're probably looking at 2 years here on your roster where he's being productive. Maybe you can get a little bit more, but honestly, when I get a running back, I'm honestly looking for the short term, especially right now. He's 25 years old, soon 26, 27-ish, somewhere around there in that range. I could see that. Maybe they have an extension. Maybe he gets tagged for another year, and so forth and so forth. A lot of ambiguity here. All in all, price tag here, 110 and a second. A first and Zach Evans. Very palatable for what you're looking at for the now over here with the production, with the workload going forward, and then obviously normal running back attrition with that, which you can't predict with running backs. But when you look at this price tag, that might be something you're looking at. If I'm a rebuilding team, when it comes to paying up for running backs, it's just something I'm not going to do. If I'm rebuilding, if I'm middle of the road, that's something I'm not willing to do. I'm just really just trying to gather assets, and then I'll make that move once the time is right. Well, Ramondre Stevenson here going into 2023 looks like he's going to get a lot of workload. I think in a lot of leagues too. These are leagues where trades happened. I think in a lot of leagues it's a little bit more expensive than this as well. I think in a lot of leagues it's just hard to make the trade because they know they got a running back here getting a lot of touches. And I don't think he's as liquid as what the calculators, what the trades that actually happen say. I don't think he's a very liquid asset because if I'm a team and I'm here to win it, I got him on my team, I'm not dealing him away unless I'm getting a lot more in return than what he's actually worth, because his intrinsic value with the production is worth more than that, especially in the short term, because I want to win money. Money is more important than actual trade value. If I know this gets me a good chance of winning money, I'm one of the top 2 teams in the league or something like that, the liquidity of him isn't exactly what the calculators, what the values are saying. That's what I'm thinking processing this. If I have a running back like this that's destined to get a lot of volume, he's not going to be very liquid. If I have him on a team, I'm middle of the road rebuilding, I have him, and I'm looking at the contract, I'm looking at his age, I'm looking at what I can get. I can get younger. I need to get younger because it fits my team mold better. Then you're going to see more liquidity. But maybe 50, 60, 70% of leagues, I don't even know. I'm making that up. But there's a good portion of leagues where he's not liquid, and he's going to be harder to move than what the deals are saying. And that's just real life scenarios, because I talk trades on here with some of these players, and I get that in the comment section. Let me know what you're doing with Ramondre Stevenson, because he is in this flux situation where the price seems right, considering the volume you're getting in 2023. But considering the volume in 2023, with the price being right, I just don't see it happening too much as well. That being said, maybe not as liquid as what we think. This player here is super liquid. He's super liquid. Even his joints are liquid after all the injuries. We're talking about Rashad Penny from the Philadelphia Eagles. Signed a 1-year deal with the team. He's 27 years old. Ancient for a running back these days. RB 43 in ADP, 133 overall. Let me know if you think that's cheap or expensive for what he is. And here are some other players in that range right now. Samaje Perine, Israel Abakanda, Chase Brown, Damian Harris. So there's some other running backs in that range that come right after him per ADP. Real drafts are different, of course. Also, you have DeAndre Swift there, but ADP was calibrated after that. So the value is in there. He had some production in 2021. He had a good run there, but injured the next year. Injured a million times throughout his career. He's often injured. Going to the trade analyzer, he's being valued as a late third and 1 QB and 2 QB. So pretty much he's saying, or the market's saying, because this is configured off the market, is that he is a cheap speculation play. He's a cheap speculation veteran, and people are putting chips on the cheap. going to the trade finder into QB. They traded him straight up for Hendon Hooker. 2 thirds in the league, 309, 2025 third, Malik Davis in a fifth, Chase Claypool. We talked about him in a video like a week or so ago. When I think about this situation here, not just him, but just the situation in general, because this can really mold into other players. It's really what you want to do with your cheap picks, what you want to do with these veterans who are on the downturn, but do have something in their profile that could allow them a pop for a few games, but the odds are severely stacked against them. You kind of know what you're going to get, but also the sunk cost in some leagues could be bare minimum. When it comes to me, I just look at him as a speculation play. I'm not really trying to get at him. I don't care. I don't really care about Rashad Penny, but there are some leagues or some trade scenarios where I can see off the rip where he could end up on my team just because he's just a throw-in. I don't even ask to just put him in the trade and he's there. And I'm just caring about the other pieces. He's just there. I throw him on the roster and I just go with it. He's adding no value to the deal. Also, most of the deals I see done, they're bigger deals with a lot of players. We can't go over those in these videos because we'd spend all day just breaking down tit for tat what went on with the trade. However, this is a player that's just a speculation play. Kind of expensive, but you can also say kind of cheap. It's really how you interpret it. I kind of look at this as an expensive speculation play because I can speculate on players for cheap, and a lot cheaper than that, who have a lot of flaws, who are more than likely not going to make it, who have the odds stacked against them, who also have upside. So I'm looking at that. This next player has a lot of upside, has some stuff stacked against them. He is cheaper, a good bit cheaper, and it's Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. 25 years old, even though he's 2 years into the league. This is his second year. He's 25 years old. Those are those old rookie players coming in the league because before you know it, they're 25, 26, 27. Right now being valued as RB81, 245th overall. He's free. However, Dalvin Cook might be gone soon. We're seeing more news percolating social media over that. I look for the value to be increasing. It should be increased now. It should be rising a little bit by the day, but it'll only go to a certain point. He ran a 4.38 40-yard dash at 204 pounds. We have some athleticism here. 5th rounder in 2022. Popped in camp last year. A lot of people talking him up. Does have some upside. Going to the trade analyzer. In all formats, he's going for a 4th-round pick. Seems fair. Makes sense in my head. But you go to the trade finder, and this makes even more sense. 309 straight up, 305 straight up, 405 straight up, 5th round straight up, 2024 third straight up. So around the 3rd round range. That makes sense because you have a speculation play here at running back who could be in a situation where he could be the RB2, maybe RB3, because we do also have McBride there now that they drafted him. We have some competition. That means we might see a running back who's a speculation play when attrition happens in the season. Once we get middle of the year, and if he's still on the depth chart here as one of the top backs, could give you some patch-up games, could be able to pop for you. Those running backs get some chances here and there. We do see these running backs happen throughout the season, and you may want that at the end of your roster. And per ADP, per some of these trades, it's a little bit cheaper than some of those other speculative running backs, but I expect that price to go up a little bit, and I expect him to be a little bit less liquid. The time to get him, though, was probably a few weeks ago, a few months ago, prior to this, mid-season last year. You don't want to really go in now, but you kind of can because the price is still palatable. It's just that it just feels better. It just feels better a few weeks, few months ago because the price was lower. The anticipation was a lot lower, even though there was some caution in the air around Dalvin Cook. Now it's starting to be more real by the day. A lot of people talking up Ty Chandler. A lot of people talking up Dwayne McBride. We see it. The price is just inching. The liquidity is going down, and that's what we see. Also, liquidity could be going up because he'd be stashed away at the end of the roster, and now it's go time for that manager. They feel like they can move him. Sometimes you can catch a deal on that. Sometimes they just try and hold you over a barrel. We see it both ways, especially looking at Trade Finder, hearing people in the comment section. That's just real life when you look from Dynasty League to Dynasty League. But Ty Chandler, cheap speculation play, but the price is going up just in little increments, and it's only going to go up so far. But the time to speculate was a few months ago, because he was one of those running backs on the back end of the roster who did have some upside. First running back we're going to talk about today is Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, RB14, 39 overall in ADP, 25 years old, free agent after 2024 unless they pick up his fifth-year option. Last year, even though he's playing through injuries, he had 3 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 games, 13 double-digit scoring weeks with a low of 6.6 PPR fantasy points and a high of 27.6. This is all per RotoViz. It's not like I made this shit up. Also, he played through injuries, like I previously stated, so that started him off a little bit slow and up and down throughout the year. Jalen Warren's also there. Very good running back that they got on the cheap last year, who could also take away some touches. I think they're a good 1-2 combo. I think they're good to have together for an NFL roster. Going to the trade analyzer, going to the value here, in 1 QB, they got him around the 104. In 2 QB, around the 106 and 107 per the calculator, the trade analyzer on DLF. Going to the trade finder, though, looking at real trades that has happened. Russ Wilson in a 2024 first, this is 1 QB. 2024 second, a 2025 second, a 2026 first, and a 2026 second. A 108 and a 204, a 109, a 208. Next trade is 306, 406, 506, 2024 third, fourth, fifth, 2025 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Interesting deal there. Russ Wilson in 2 QB, Isaiah Pacheco in 2024 first, then it's a Desmond Ridder straight up in 2 QB, and then the last trade is a 2024 first. What this is telling me is a very liquid asset. His value can be up and down depending on who's in your league and who wants to trade for him and how the trade's going down. Also, it's telling me that you can probably deal for him for a cheap QB in 2 QB leagues. A 2024 first and change seems like the neutral point here on the trade market. You got some other ones here like a 108 and 204. You got a 2025 first and like 20 different draft picks that are like third round or worse than one of these. 2024 first and Russell Wilson. So you got a lot here to work with. So that seems like the sticking point here. 2024 first and some change. If you're buying him and you get him for just 2024 first or something cheaper than that, consider that a good deal, it looks like. If you're having to pay a lot more than that, might be a little bit more overvalued. That's what we're seeing from the trade market. That's how we're trying to gauge it. 104, 1 QB per calculator. 2 QB, 106, 107. When I look at running backs, though, I look at 90% of them, or 99, 95, a lot of them, most of them, as being short-term assets for my team. With a guy like Najee Harris, we're looking at a short-term asset that we're trying to hope to get a little bit more out of. Last year created a little bit of cheaper price tag with him playing injured and not having the pop-off games that people were expecting. Looking back at it, numbers-wise, wasn't too shabby, but considering the price point, considering the buzz, considering what people were paying in draft capital and redraft and Dynasty, a lot of people have soured. A lot cheaper price tag here. So if you want to buy in, I mean, there's other running backs that are short-term running backs that you'll pay a lot more for. The cheaper, the better for the short term. Really depends on your roster. Typically, I like to build around the wide receivers and have a ton of wide receivers, and I like to get my running backs cheap. So the cheaper, the better. So if he's overpriced, and if I can't get him on a deal, it's no big deal to me. I'll just move on and try to get the running back that I can get for the deal. But really, I'm looking at the wide receivers. I'm pounding wide receivers, and whatever I have left, I'll try and get my running backs on the cheap. That may mean I might not be able to get him still. It might mean that because I might want to save my 2024 firsts for later because I'm not going to spend those willy-nilly either. So it's going to be hard for me to get him, but I can understand other people wanting to do so. It's going to be hard for me to get him in a lot of my leagues now that I'm thinking this through while on camera, that I want to build around wide receivers. With the capital I got left, I'm not going to spend it willy-nilly. I'm just going to wait a little bit. I might already have them. Startup drafts, I might catch them on the deal depending on what's left on the board. But if there's good wide receivers, I'm leaning there no matter what. That being said, there's going to be times where I might be able to get them. I might think through the trade and say that's okay. But with the capital I have left over, with my roster construction, with the wide receivers I'm trying to get, which I'm looking at most of my teams. I'm wide receiver heavy. It's going to be hard for me to make those trades. And with those 2024 firsts, I don't want to be spending them left and right now because I want to hold on to that capital for next year, especially in 2QB with Caleb Williams and company. I want to make sure I have that. It's going to be hard to pay up for that. Not a bad running back, not a guy I'm saying not to buy. I'm just thinking through in my head when I'm looking at the price here. If I'm looking to sell him, just kick the tires because the price tag is a little bit different from league to league. You'd be getting more than a 2024 first if you're going to do that. He's more of a hold, though. He's more of a hold, wait and see, hold for the short term. If I'm rebuilding, if I don't think I want to be there in 2 years to compete for my league when he's 27 years old. I think I read that he was 25 earlier in the video. Yeah, you may want to digest him. You may want to put him off on the market, see what happens. You may want to look forward to that because there's no point of holding the running back that's going to win you a couple games that inevitably, when you're ready to win, will be on the outs or be trending downward in their career. Let's pivot to our next running back who ran hot last year and is on a new team and could have a good transition as well and is dirt cheap. We're talking about Jamal Williams of the Saints. And ADP is being drafted as RB41. 128th player off the board. He's 28 years old. Obviously, we know the other shoe's going to drop sooner than later on that one. He was signed to a 3-year deal, but there's an out after the 2024 season, so technically it could be a 2-year deal with him. Last year with the Lions, he had 5 RB1 games, 3 RB2 games, and averaged 13.5 PPR points per game. Led the league with 17 rushing touchdowns. The Saints depth chart goes him, Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Eno Benjamin. So we do have some competition there. We are expecting Kendre Miller to do something this year, maybe in the back half of the year, maybe early next year. We're expecting Kendre Miller to do something sooner than later. Alvin Kamara, we're waiting on him if he gets suspended or not. We're waiting that out. Alvin Kamara is an older running back as well. Fragility could play in there. Jamal Williams could be the goal line guy here in a situation where he's getting touches at the goal line. That's something you want to look at. Trade Analyzer, because everybody's got a price, and the price is what matters here. Trade Analyzer, the calculator, mid-third in all formats. So it looks like if you're in the 3rd round, you don't like what's on the board, and it feels sketchy, and you good for short-term production, short-term guy that you can speculate on. Maybe you want to go with Jamal Williams. Looking at actual trades here on the Trade Finder, trades that really happened. Tank Dell, 2024 4th and a 7th. Trey Lance and 1 QB. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 2.1, 408 and a 2024 3rd, a 2024 4th, and a 2024 5th. Geno Smith in 1 QB. Very cheap guy to get. And really, if you're in a rookie draft, or if there's rookies on your team that you want to pivot off of, or if you got some cheap players, or you want to pivot and you just need a short-term back, you can speculate on that you think that could get some touches this year, that could get some goal line looks, that you're just trying to get some back-end running backs here that could get some opportunity. Maybe you want to look at him. Maybe. Who do you want to spend your cheap capital on? Who do you want to do that with? Maybe if I'm in a win-now team and I need a running back for now, and if 1 or 2 dominoes fall, you could see Jamal Williams giving you something. Are you shooting for the moon? Not anymore. Last year was the moon. The moon's over. Now we're coming down a little bit. Probably going to regress more towards the average of what he does. But again, that could be allowing you to have a few spot weeks. I'm thinking we're looking at spot weeks here. Nothing like last year, but some spot games. We'll have to see what happens here with the depth chart. Kendre Miller's got to be doing something eventually. I can't see him not doing anything, so he should be getting his opportunity sooner than later, if not later this year, mid this year, something like that. But when we're looking at on the cheap, maybe you draft Kendre Miller and you get this guy later, and you got a 1-2 punch just in case something happens to Kamara. Maybe you wrap that up. Maybe that's something you want to do. Maybe you want to speculate on it. Maybe it doesn't even cost this much. I wouldn't pay the 210. I wouldn't pay Trey Lance in 1 QB unless that really goes down south and you really think he doesn't get an opportunity. Geno Smith 1 QB, that makes sense. 4th round picks makes sense. Late 3rd round picks when you know things are going to be zapped off the board, that makes sense. Really depends on what's available. 5th round picks and 4th round picks, that makes sense, what we've seen. Tank Dell, a 4th, that's 2 4ths and a 7th. That makes sense. Again, you're buying a cheap running back and you're speculating that he gets touches this year, maybe some spot production. Moving on to a cheaper running back, a young guy that could give you some value if attrition happens. And we're going to be talking about Isaiah Spiller of the Chargers. A lot of people wondering about him. Turns 22 right before the season, so still a young buck, being valued as RB58, 189 overall, 3 games with 10 or more snaps. So he hasn't been on the field much, especially last year during his rookie season. So maybe we can go up from here. Maybe we get a couple games with 20 snaps. Maybe that could happen. Who knows? The Chargers did not draft the back this year, so we're rolling with Austin Ekeler, Joshua Kelly, Roundtree, and him. So there could be an opportunity if attrition strikes that he could get some touches. He could climb the depth chart a little bit more. He could earn a little bit more opportunity. Maybe he can flash a little bit. Who knows how much longer Eckler's going to be on his team. Shouldn't be too much longer the way the tea leaves are playing, but you never know how deals work. He was a trendy player in last year's draft class. A lot of people liked him, but he fell to the 4th round. He has a 28th percentile speed score, but he ranks 76th percentile in targets while at Texas A&M. So he's a bigger running back at 217 pounds who can get work in a passing game. 4th round pick, though. Team doesn't have much invested in him, so if they want another running back, they ain't going to think twice. Trade analyzer is saying he's a late 4th round pick in rookie drafts. That's the trade value for him. So if you want him, go ahead and get him. Trade Finder saying different in real trades. Rondale Moore straight up. 312 straight up. A 2024 second straight up. A 2024 fifth straight up. 212 straight up. Gerald Everett straight up. So you're seeing 2 different stories here. Him being traded for real cheap, and then him being traded for a considerable asset, a 2nd round rookie pick. I'm looking at those picks as not being normal, and I'm looking at him not being as liquid for that price tag, and I'm looking at people reacting due to them not drafting a running back, and those people previously liking Spiller and just trying to get back in, and also not liking the pool of players when they're at the 212. Or they're not caring too much for that 2024 second, and they're just getting their guy. He can be underpriced. He can be overpriced. That being said, perk your ears up, kick the tires in your league, whether you're selling or buying. See what comes back at you with what you want to do, because you could see some opportunity here, and you just did not realize it. He could be a good value coming back at you, or selling, and you did not realize it. So just kick the tires, see what happens if you're interested either way. Either way, because the prices are everywhere. I think more likely he's around that 312 range, somewhere around there, early 4th, somewhere around there, mid-3rd, somewhere in that mushiness when you get in the late round of your rookie drafts. Somewhere around there, it's probably more likely than those 2nd round picks. But we saw a few of them, so you're probably going to have to take a look. See what happens, see what comes your way. I don't see that happening, but it did happen more than once, and probably more than what we have here on the app. So you may want to take a look, but I think that speculation is going to calm down. Right after the draft was probably when that happened, but these are recent. These are within the last few days. So it could be still going on. Check your league. Check and see if you got any sheep who are willing to pay up. But the first running back we're going to be talking about today is a veteran who we haven't really seen blow up yet in the league, but a lot of people have been talking about off and on throughout his career because he has shown the ability to do some things on the field. We're talking about J.K. Dobbins of the Baltimore Ravens. RB15 in ADP, 49th overall. He's 24 years old. He will be a free agent at the end of the season. Last year he had 2 RB1 weeks, 1 RB2 week. The knee injury really impacted his 2022 season. Really stunted his ability to really show off what he can do. Depth chart here in Baltimore. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell. So we got some guys here that can do some things as well. But really we're watching J.K. Dobbins. We're seeing if he can hit that upside. The trade analyzer, which is the calculator over at dynastyleaguefootball.com, has him batted at like a mid-first, about the 106, 105 range. In 2QB, about the 108 range, 108-ish if you want to say. But what we like to look at is the real trades. The trades that already happened, that's on their trade finder. Going to these trades, a 2024 second and third was a deal that was done. A 107, a 2024 second, and Malik Davis. a 2024 first, a 2025 second was a deal. Another one was Jared Goff and 2 QB. We saw one with DJ Moore. We saw one with Chris Godwin. 2024 first. Christian Watson straight up. TJ Hawkinson and a 108. He seems like a very liquid asset right now in the market because we're seeing a lot of trades in the app compared to other running backs in this price range, because we go over this every week. We're going down ADP one by one, and compared to the other running backs, we're seeing more one-for-one trades. We're seeing more multiplayer trades on this video. In this series, we go over the one-for-one trades because we don't want to spend an hour going over the context of each deal. It's simpler to just say, hey, you went for this guy, this pick, this pick. Here, we're seeing him dealt more. We're seeing him dealt more often. The values are more diverse. You're seeing them caught for deals. You're seeing them overpriced. You're seeing everything here. 2024 first straight up, 2024 first and a second, 107 and a second. To identify the psychology of the market here, one thing you can say is looking like a hot potato right now. One, we haven't had that hit range of production out of him. We haven't had him skyrocket yet in value. And now we're approaching the start of the season where people are trying to get their ducks in a row for the start of the season. So they're trying to figure out whether they should buy him or trade him. And they're moving their assets around, getting ready for the season. Depending on the value of your league, he's a buy and he's a sell. Just gauging these deals, gauging what's going on here. He looks like he could be either way. This is a very, very ambiguous draft class that we had this year. The values are not as great compared to previous seasons. So getting running backs like this is something some people are leaning into and some people are leaning out of as well. So he's a running back that a lot of people like. I expect his price to increase throughout the offseason. The quicker or the closer we get to the start of the year. Now we're left waiting for training camp, waiting for the start of the season, see how he's going to perform. But up until then, I see the market just starting to gain steam, adding more value to him. We're seeing a lot of redraft and best ball content creators start talking him up as a value, as a good late round guy, mid round guy to get in those drafts. With that being said, with the potential value, potential upside, and with him having a full season in this offense, when you're just looking and projecting outward, you're going to see people start to value him more. I think that's starting the liquidity here with J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a player that you can buy or sell right now because the market's all over the place. I think selling is probably going to be harder than what you think because I think a lot of people are going to try and get low on him considering the value of last season and last few years due to the injury. Also, you got to think we're going into next year where he's a potential free agent. That's something you got to think about. That could be good and bad for him. But the prospect of that could be also a good thing depending on what your manager thinks. Really, like always, in these situations, you want to kick the tires. I do see the value increasing as we get into August, as we get to the start of the season, as people start projecting him. I see him tricking up in ADP. I see these trades get a little bit more juicier as we get later in the summer. I look for his value to go up, but I also see people getting hot with him on the market, playing hot potato with him due to a lot of other content creators talking him up for redraft, best ball, and everything else. So people are starting to look at him, and that's going to make him more fluid on the market. And with him being more fluid on the market, you're going to see more trades. You're going to see a lot of different values here and there. I think in your average league or in most leagues, he's going to hold his value pretty well, and you're going to have to pay up a tiny bit, more like towards what the calculator is saying here, mid-first range. Like, I'm not going to give him away because I'm looking at this depth chart of the Ravens. I know he had some good games at the end of the season against Pittsburgh and Cleveland, 2 against Pittsburgh, 1 against Cleveland, finish off the year. Good rushing production there. Really showed us that he's coming back into stride, and maybe that can give me a good optimistic outlook going into this year. So I look for him to be a hold for a lot of people as well. So that's something you want to look at in the market here, but also a guy you want to kick tires on because a lot of trades are coming back as discounts as well. So that's something you want to think about. Now we're leaping to our next running back, and this running back's in the same situation where we're going to see his value increase throughout the summer due to the redraft content creators talking him up as a value, looking at his projected outlook going into the season. That's Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders. Right now he's being valued as RB40, 120th overall, Turns 25 in June. 2 years ago, his ADP was in the top 15. It has decreased since then, naturally. 2 RB1 weeks, 5 RB2 weeks last season, and he averaged 3.9 targets per game with a high of 9 targets in 2 games with over 5 targets, but also had a 12% target share. He was 12th in the league among running backs in targets last season, sharing the backfield with Brian Robinson. J.D. McKissic's gone, leaving 40 targets and a 14% target share. So this is going to allow him to do more work in the passing offense. Per Peter Howard, he's going to get all those targets. All of them are going to go to Antonio Gibson. Just send him a tweet and ask him. He'll let you know. Dynasty Trade Analyzer, the calculator, in 1 QB has him valued in the 208 range, 2 QB, 210 range, so about the same. Late second round rookie pickish. Let me know in the comment section, is that what you're willing to pay, or do you feel like that's a little light? I'm thinking about that off the cuff. I have different feelings coming through. But looking at the trade finder here, real trades that's happened in real leagues on my fantasy league. Gus Edwards in a 2024 second. Chuba Hubbard 305. Zonovan Knight in 203. Straight up for Dalton Schultz. Straight up for Zay Jones. Straight up for Tyler Boyd. Straight up for Rachaad White even. So his value is kind of all over the place. And that's kind of what I was expecting. Averaging about a mid-second. Maybe a mid-second and some change. And that change is rather light. Lack of liquidity here, I'm guessing. Because you're seeing what you could have in him. And you're wanting to hold going into the season. On the other hand here, you could sell him knowing that his value is going up in the offseason because people are going to be looking at his projected workload, the increase of targets, his burst, size-adjusted athleticism, and you might be able to sneak away with a good deal. So mid-second's looking like our baseline right now. So we want to try and shoot ahead of that. We want to maybe go for an early second, late first. We want to catch that bag. We don't want to break even. So if you're trying to sell, try and be greedy. Try and be greedy on him to get a little extra. That's what I'm looking like on the value. That's probably not going to happen most of the time, but it has happened for some people, as you can see. Some people's not going to be you a lot of times, so think about it that way and what you want to do. Ultimately, you're moving back towards a mid-second if you're negotiating a deal. Mid-second and some change seems like what's getting deals done because you know what? You want a little bit of extra with that. Buying him, he seems to be pretty liquid. He seems like a guy that in some deals you're able to get done if you want to move some picks around. Rebuilding teams need to be leery, but yet optimistic because he's a running back that could go to a new situation and be productive due to his ability to catch the ball in the backfield, size, adjusted athleticism. That's a running back that a lot of teams like. That is good for fantasy. He's just 25 years old, so going into next year, he'll be 26. So we got a couple more years left. This could be a running back that could still hold you value over time. So if you need to speculate on somebody on the cheap, you don't like what you got out of your rookie draft, you don't like some of the wide receivers, or you got a running back you want to deal and you want to package some picks together or something, maybe somebody you want to look for. A lot of people are talking them up right now. I expect the price to go up. So if you're going to get in now. And I think his value is going to go up until he gets some slow games or whatever. I think his value is going to increase because we're hearing a lot of people start chirping him up. We're catching a lot of content creators chirp up this running back as well on the videos, on the podcast. He's a backup, but he's in a good situation. The roster opened up for him, and looking like right now could be a good sign that he could get some opportunity later in the year, especially if attrition hits, and that's Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. RB55 right now, 167 overall, just 23 years old. He was the Browns' 5th-round pick in 2022, 84th percentile speed score, over 1,300 yards and 20 touchdowns in his final years with the Cincinnati Bearcats. Kareem Hunt is gone, so he is the guy projected behind Nick Chubb this year, so we're expecting an increase in opportunities for him. Going to the trade analyzer to look at his value here, mid-4th-round rookie pick in all formats. In the trade finder, looking at some real trades off MFL, 306 straight up, 404 straight up, 310 straight up, then straight up for Michael Gallup, straight up for Zach Ertz, straight up for 312, a 2024 4th. So in line kinda with the calculator, but you will catch deals where it goes for a little more. And that could be subjective for what you want and where you're at and what you got, depending on how bad you want him. All in all, like I say with all these guys in the end of these videos, what do you want to spend your cheap capital on? Your lesser picks, your lesser players, how you want to wheel them around. He's a player that's in a good situation where if attrition hits, could be in line to get a couple games with a good workload. And that could allow you to have some production. He's also a player that could spike in value. And if he spikes in value, you may want to think about dealing him since he's a late round pick and they can move on from him. You may want to do something like that. Ultimately, his value, again, we're looking for it to increase throughout the offseason as people start looking more at depth charts, getting in line for redraft, getting more best ball teams together, all that stuff. Redraft has an impact on the market, and it impacts these players who are kind of forgotten about, but you look back at them and their workload and their potential and all that stuff, they trick up a little bit in value, and you'll start seeing that in the next couple weeks and months as we get closer to training camp, as we get deeper into the preseason. That's something you're going to see. For a lot of people, he's probably going to be a hold. A lot of people are going to hold because they know Nick Chubb is the lead guy there, gets a lot of workload. Running backs get a lot of workload, get a lot of opportunities. A lot of opportunities means that you could be impacted by an injury. That could happen. This is a team you want a running back off of. And those are 30 running backs that we talked about today. Some of these didn't age well as they were older from months back in January up until now. But we got a good look at the market. We got a good look at the process. The process over time, looking through these trades, even though a guy got moved to this team and that team and then his value just changed, there is process in line that you can probably move on to another player and value him in a certain light. So there's still value in those scenarios. Also, guessing the market in the future is a smart idea, so you can make different plays or move your chips around. Say, buying this guy in December instead of now because you know it's going to be a little cheaper, or trying to sell this guy in season versus now because he's an older veteran and his points matter more in season than right now. So those are stuff you want to look at. Players have different prices at different times, and you want to capitalize on that. A lot going on here, but the market is very important to realize in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. It's only going to help you going forward. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.